Hey truckers, today we're going to see Reincarnation of the Businesswoman at School Part 3. Miss Gu. Zhou Xinghong went back to stand beside Gu Ning. He looked much more delighted than before. Uncle Zhou, Gu Ning called him. Zhou Xinghong didn't run away. Gu Ning was satisfied and gave him a sincere smile. The second time, Li Jinjin chose a raw material with jade inside. Gu Ning did the same thing. Although Gu Ning's wasn't big, the species of the jade was much more valuable than Li Jinjin's. Rub this one, please. Gu Ning's raw material was just a little bigger than an apple and its outer layer was thin. It was better to rub it. It took more time to rub a stone than to cut it directly. Before long, Li Jinjin's raw material was cut out. A layer of green showed. It's green inside. The crowd erupted into discussion. They had just witnessed an emerald cutout. Now there was another one. Li Jinjin was excited. She threw a provocative glance to Gu Ning. Qin Yifan, on the other hand, was worried about Gu Ning. As for Gu Ning herself, she was calmer than ever. It's an emerald. It's a medium-level jade of the glutinous rice type. No one was happier than Li Jinjin now. She again gave Gu Ning a provocative and proud glance. Although it was just a medium-level jade, it was big and was worth a lot. But while Li Jinjin was enjoying her success, Gu Ning's raw material showed green at the same time. Li Jinjin became upset at once. How come? How was it possible? How could Gu Ning's raw material show green? Li Jinjin couldn't accept the truth. She ran over immediately. There was a layer of green indeed, but its type was still unknown. Qin Yifan and Li Zhenyu were both surprised. They also didn't expect there would be jade in a raw material randomly picked up by Gu Ning. Meanwhile, Qin Yifan was relieved but Li Zhenyu was displeased. He obviously didn't want Gu Ning to win. Zhou Xinghong was amazed too. He didn't know Gu Ning had jade eyes at all, and Gu Ning had helped him gain a lot of money just then. Thus Zhou Xinghong believed Gu Ning must be an expert and he already thought highly of her. Now, Gu Ning's raw material showed green again. Zhou Xinghong greatly admired her now. Li Jinjin clenched her fists. She prayed to herself that Gu Ning's jade was worthless or a low-level jade. As long as it was worse than hers, Li Jinjin would be satisfied. Unfortunately, the fact went the opposite way. Li Jinjin's jade was in the same size of Zhou Xinghong's jade of hibiscus species. Once the jade was cut out, someone bid immediately. But Li Jinjin wouldn't sell it anyway since her family dealt in the business of jade. Thus when someone wanted to bid, Li Zhenyu stopped him. Sorry, everyone. We are not going to sell this jade. The crowd felt disappointed, but they couldn't force the owner to sell the jade. Therefore, they could only hope that Gu Ning would sell hers. Since her raw material showed green, it was highly possible there was jade inside. After a while, Gu Ning's jade was cut out. After cleaning it with water, it showed its real appearance. The texture was smooth and warm. It had great transparency and light shiny color. It looked like a glass. The glass type. It is the old pit glass type. The workers' hands, which were holding the jade, were trembling because of excitement. Hearing that, everyone drew a long breath in. They were all shocked. Old pit glass type was the top-level type among jade. All of a sudden, Li Jinjin's medium-level jade of the glutinous rice type seemed worthless. Li Jinjin was more than upset now. It was so hard for her to believe the result. Gu Ning immediately absorbed the power. There was one last raw material waiting to be cut, but given what had happened, Li Jinjin was very likely to lose. If she couldn't cut out a jade which was more valuable than a jade of old pit glass species, she would certainly lose. However, it was so difficult to do that. Even though, Li Jinjin still had hope. It wasn't the last second. Miss Gu, do you want to sell this jade? I'll pay 10 million yuan for it. 15 million yuan. 20 million yuan. LL new rise at N0V/LBI/.cm. 40 million yuan. The last bid was from Li Zhenyu. Li Jinjin felt dissatisfied at once. Brother, how can you buy her jade? Hearing that, Li Zhenyu frowned slightly. He was a little dissatisfied too. Jinjin, don't forget I'm a businessman, Li Zhenyu warned. He would protect Li Jinjin from the emotional aspect, but it didn't mean he would ignore his family's business. the jewelry industry always lacked top-level jade. It was so hard to find one, and Li Zhenyu would never give it up just because of Li Jinjin's jealousy. Li Jinjin was upset, but she couldn't do anything about it. 60 million yuan. The bid stopped at the price of 60 million yuan, which was reasonable. The bidder was Qin Yifan. He came to City G for jade. He would never allow himself to miss such a rare top-level jade. Although he and Li Zhenyu were good friends, business was business. Only the most generous buyer would get the jade. At the end, Qin Yifan got the old pit glass jade from Gu Ning at the price of 60 million yuan, but they had to wait to sign the contract and transfer the money until the bet was over. Miss Li, if your last raw material doesn't have a jade which is worth more than 60 million yuan, then you'll lose, Gu Ning said provocatively. Li Jinjin was irritated now. If she had been jealous of Gu Ning before, now she hated Gu Ning to the death. Zhou Xinghong then realized Gu Ning had a bet with Li Jinjin. He admired Gu Ning's ability even more now. The last round, Gu Ning chose a raw material with a purple jade inside. It wasn't big though, just the size of 2 apples. She decided to have it be rubbed too. Meanwhile, Li Jinjin still had hers cut. After a cut, the out layer was removed, and a pure green showed widely. It's green inside. Is this the old pit ice type? There was another round of excited shout. Li Jinjin, who had a vain hope, now felt thrilled. Old pit ice species was a high level separate among jade, and only ranked lower than the old pit glass species. If this one was big enough, it was still possible for Li Jinjin to beat Gu Ning. Qin Yifan couldn't help glancing at Gu Ning. Even Zhou Xinghong felt concerned, but Gu Ning stayed calm as usual. No one knew whether she was being confident or didn't care about the result. Since Gu Ning had earned that much money, 10 million yuan was nothing to her. But it was too early to be worried or proud now. The final result wasn't out yet. Right at that moment, the worker made another cut. Everyone held his or her breath, fixing their eyes on the machine. However, there was no more green showing, instead there was white stone inside like what it was on the outside. Everyone was disappointed at once. There was only a thin layer of green. No, impossible. This is impossible. Li Jinjin couldn't accept the truth. It was a jade of the old pit ice type. How could it have disappeared? Cut it again, again. Li Jinjin shouted. The worker continued, but there was only stone left. Li Jinjin was struck dumb standing there. She lost. She lost the bet. Miss Li, you lose, Gu Ning reminded her. Up-to-date OVLS on OVL bin.cm. Hearing Gu Ning's voice, Li Jinjin suddenly looked at her. She didn't say a word, but her eyes were full of viciousness. Gu Ning smiled lightly. She didn't care and didn't want to urge Li Jinjin. She moved her sight to her raw material which was being rubbed instead. It's green inside. An encouraging voice sounded. There was a light shiny purple which showed, but the window was small, so the color wasn't very obvious. After several rounds of rubbing, the color showed gradually. It was light purple. Isn't this violet? What? Impossible. Hearing violet, the crowd all rounded their eyes in shock. No, this can't be true, Li Jinjin was losing her control over her emotions. Can it be just a thin layer? If it is violet, this young girl is so unbelievably lucky. She has 2 high-level jade out of 3 raw materials. Everyone looked to Gu Ning with great admiration. Some felt envious too. When the worker finished rubbing and cleaned the jade with water, a shiny violet jade of the glass type came into everyone's sight. Violet! It is violet! It is a violet jade of the glass type. The worker's hands were trembling quickly. It was too much for his heart to bear. He had cut out stones for half of his lifetime. This was his first time to cut out 2 high-level jade consecutively, especially this violet. Purple was the rarest color of jade, and glass was the rarest type of jade. This jade was a very pure purple. It was a highly elegant purple. The light charming color was like the haze from the east, which was full of implicit beauty. No one was more excited than the boss, who almost fainted, but he was thrilled not because of happiness, but because of regret. He knew this new group of raw materials had a high green rate, but he didn't expect the rate would that high. The number of raw materials which had been cut out today was merely around 10, but there were 4 of them that had jade, 2 even had high-level jade inside. If he had cut them out himself, he would be super rich overnight. But it was too late to do that. He didn't have the nerve to cut out all his raw materials. If there was no jade inside, he would lose every cent he had. Although the violet jade of the glass type was ranked at the same high level as the jade of the old pit glass type, it was much more expensive because of its rarity. Thus the bid began from 30 million yuan, 40 million yuan, 50 million yuan, 70 million yuan. At the end, the violet jade was sold out at the price of 80 million yuan. The buyer was still Qin Yifan. Li Zhenyu did want to compete for the violet jade, but he didn't have enough money for it. The Li family wasn't in the same level of wealth as the Qin family after all. Besides, the last bid was almost higher than the value of the violet jade. Qin Yifan was truly from the super rich family. He paid 130 million yuan for 2 jade within a day. Actually, 130 million yuan was the highest price Qin Yifan could pay for the jade. The Qin family had hundreds of million in assets and was ranked the 4th richest family in City F on the list. The Qin family was universally acknowledged as the second-line super rich family. But the Qin family was involved in many industries other than Itsue Jade Store. Itsue Jade Store was merely inherited from the ancestors. The Qin family didn't want to close it and ran it as a sideline. Thus, the Qin family actually didn't have much cash on hand. The 130 million yuan was the best Qin Yifan could do. He didn't want to miss the high-level jade. As for Gu Ning, Qin Yifan now more than just appreciated her. He admired her greatly. No matter if Gu Ning was only lucky, or if she truly had the ability, she could cut out great jade, which was everything in this industry. They needed to sign the contract and transfer money. Oh, Miss Li lost the bet between us. Please transfer the 10 million yuan to me as well, Gu Ning reminded. Although she said it airily, Li Jinjin felt utterly displeased. Gu Ning, will you stop? Li Jinjin scolded. Her face changed because of anger, as if she had been treated unfairly. What? Why should I stop? You agreed on the bet. Do you want to deny it? Gu Ning said. She indeed wanted to deny it, but she cared about her reputation. If she really denied it, her reputation would be ruined. Please allow me to transfer the money. Although Li Zhenyu felt disappointed too, he had to follow the rules. If there was any negative rumors that went abroad, his family's business would be affected too. Brother, Li Jinjin unconsciously called her brother. She didn't actually want to stop him. She merely felt helpless. But no matter what Li Jinjin had in her mind, it wasn't a good time for her to utter another word. Thus the minute she opened her mouth, Li Zhenyu gave her a warning glance. She shut her mouth at once. Qin Yifan, at the same time, was like an outsider. He had no intention to help Li Zhenyu and Li Jinjin. Because he knew if Gu Ning had lost the game, they would do the same thing. Thus, Qin Yifan preferred to be an outsider. Before long, the contract had been signed and the money had been transferred. Gu Ning, you're so awesome. How can you cut out 2 jade among 3 raw materials? Did you really choose the raw materials by luck? Do you have jade eyes? Qin Yifan was still excited. He accidentally told the truth. Although knowing Qin Yifan was joking, Gu Ning felt uneasy. She smiled. I'm always a lucky person. That's all. Qin Yifan looked at the left for raw materials in Gu Ning's cart. Are there more emeralds in your raw materials? I have no idea, Gu Ning replied casually. Oh, it's almost 12 a.m. Let's go have lunch together. Qin Yifan invited. Li Jinjin was in a rage now. She hated Gu Ning to the death. Now Qin Yifan even wanted to invite Gu Ning to have lunch together. Li Jinjin almost went crazy. If you don't want Yifan to hate you, mind your behavior. We can deal with Gu Ning secretly, Li Zhenyu warned. He wanted Li Jinjin to be with Qin Yifan because it would be helpful to the Li family. Thus he naturally disliked Gu Ning, who had grabbed Qin Yifan's attention and defeated Li Jinjin. Or more technically, he hated Gu Ning because of the 10 million yuan. 10 million yuan wasn't much to his family, but could be used to do many things. He would be lying if he said he didn't care. Li Jinjin was a little surprised, but also felt happy. True. If she wanted to deal with Gu Ning, she could do it secretly. City G was the domain of Li Jinjin. She had plenty of ways to deal with Gu Ning. Besides, she knew some gangsters. It was easy to hurt Gu Ning in Li Jinjin's eyes. Thinking of this, Li Jinjin felt comfortable and relaxed. No, thanks. I have something else to deal with. Thank you. Gu Ning rejected Qin Yifan's invitation. Fine. Qin Yifan didn't insist. He asked later, will you be here later? No, I won't come again, Gu Ning said. All the great jade was in her hands now. There weren't many left in the shop after all. She had used her jade eyes to earn a fortune. It would be too selfish if she collected all the valuable jade in the shops. Qin Yifan had to give up at the end. He only reminded Gu Ning to turn to him if she had any trouble. Miss Gu, let's go transfer the money. Zhou Jinghong stayed by Gu Ning's side all the time. Knowing she was leaving, he asked on his own initiative. We don't need to rush. Uncle Zhou, let's have lunch together, Gu Ning said. Great. Zhou Jinghong didn't reject. Gu Ning's money was still in his account after all. While they were leaving, Zhou Jinghong helped Gu Ning take her raw materials which hadn't been cut open. After Gu Ning and the others were gone, the shop became popular and well-known. Everyone now knew there were 2 high-level jade that had been cut out in the shop. When people heard the owner of those 2 high-level jade was a young girl, everyone was amazed. Gu Ning didn't plan to leave the antique market now. Thus she chose a restaurant right in the antique market and booked a private dining room. Miss Gu, thank you so much for helping me this time. If it hadn't been for you, I would have abandoned that raw material. Then I would have lost so much money. Zhou Jinghong thanked Gu Ning the minute they sat down. Gu Ning smiled. She didn't want to hide her real purpose, so she said straightforwardly, Uncle Zhou, I don't want to lie to you. Let me tell you the truth. I helped you for a reason, especially when I found out your identity. Hearing that, Zhou Jinghong was surprised and puzzled. She did it for a reason? For what? Why? Even though she knew his identity, it wouldn't be of great help. He had lost everything and was a poor, ordinary man now. What was Gu Ning's purpose? Although knowing the young girl had helped him for a reason, Zhou Jinghong wasn't mad. He knew Gu Ning wasn't a bad person. Read latest chapters at no.vel bin/.c/o/m only. Why? Zhou Jinghong asked. Because I'll be involved in the jewelry and jade industry, but I am still a student, I can't do it myself. I need a professional and competent manager. Although I don't know much about you, you didn't run away with the money just then. You're not a malicious man. And from the development of Zhoufu jewelry, your ability is also affirmed. So, after knowing your identity, I want you. What? Zhou Jinghong rounded his eyes in shock. He didn't expect a teenage girl would be so ambitious as to run a company and had even tested him before choosing him to be the manager. But they were merely strangers who had only met each other once. Why would she trust him? We just met for the first time. We're not acquaintances even. Why do you trust me? Zhou Jinghong asked. Yes, we met for the first time. We're not acquaintances even. I completely have no reason to believe you, but I am willing to believe you. The employer can't be suspicious, and the suspect can't be used. Although I care about my people very much, I never accept betrayal. If one treats me with sincerity, I'll give him or her a bright future. If one betrays me, he or she will be dead. No way around it. Saying the dead word, Gu Ning seemed murderous. Zhou Jinghong was stunned, as if he was surrounded by the feeling of death. He held his breath. Zhou Jinghong was a sophisticated businessman. He had met a variety of people, and he could judge from Gu Ning's air that she was a powerful as well as cruel person. Of course, she was only cruel to her opponents. She cared about her people very much. Facing Gu Ning's warning, Zhou Jinghong didn't feel reluctant, instead, he trusted Gu Ning. As for Zhou Jinghong, if he chose to follow Gu Ning, he would no betray her. He was an upright and loyal people himself. Perhaps, you're not optimistic about me, and don't want a young girl to be your boss. Or, you want to be the boss yourself and restart your business, but I believe you're a smart man who knows clearly about the pros and cons. You need a lot of money and supplies to restart your business. However, let alone your lack of both of them, Xiaoping won't stand aside and let you start your own business. You probably couldn't register. Of course, you can avoid Xiaoping and go to other places, but if you don't have enough funds and supplies, it will be very hard for you to develop. That was exactly what was on Zhou Xinghong's mind. Although he wanted to restart his business, he also clearly knew it wouldn't be easy. Even if he avoided Xiaoping and went to another place, he lacked the money and supplies. He could fail again. And I can provide enough money and supplies for you. Probably in your eyes I was just lucky today, but it's not. I have my own unique skills, so I don't have to worry about money and supplies. If you're willing to accept my offer, you can have 20% shares of my jewelry company. You'll be fully responsible to run the company. To the public, you're the chairman and have all the rights of the chairman. I'll be a behind-the-scene boss. You can discuss with me on things you can't decide. Zhou Xinghong was now completely shocked. He never doubted Gu Ning's ability of stone gambling. After knowing she had her own skills, he even thought more highly of her. But what shocked him more was that Gu Ning was willing to let him take over the company. He could even have 20% shares. Why would she trust him so much? There was nothing better than being trusted for your own ability and character. Undoubtedly, Zhou Xinghong made up his mind. He actually valued a hard-working life over wealth. He wanted to live his life. Without hesitation, Zhou Xinghong stood up, looking at Gu Ning. He said, "Miss Gu, I'm willing to follow you and I'll never betray you." At the same time, Zhou Xinghong made up his mind to run a greatly profitable business with Gu Ning. The temporary location of the company was in City G. Gu Ning planned to establish the headquarters of her company in the capital city when she went to university. The capital city was where she felt familiar and was going to stay. The brand was named the Jade Beauty, and her company was called the Jade Beauty Jewelry Company. Its major business was jade. As for other kinds of jewelry like gold, silver and so forth, Gu Ning planned to involve them in the future, not now. Since Gu Ning only had jade of great quality in her hands, she decided to make and sell high-end products. A piece of jewelry made of medium high-level jade cost at least hundreds of thousands of yuan. If it was made of high-level jade, it would cost millions of yuan or more. Although there weren't many buyers, it was very profitable if one piece was sold. Zhou Xinghong was in charge of finding factories and shops in City G. He also needed to hire staff and buy machines. He knew better than Gu Ning concerning those things. Thus Gu Ning didn't interfere. Zhou Xinghong decided to use his previous designers and carvers. The boss of Zhoufu Jewelry had changed, and those workers who had followed him had all left. Because Zhou Xinghong was known for his kindness, his old staff maintained a good relationship with him. After he had gone bankrupt, they had also helped him. Although their design and carvings weren't the top level, they weren't worse than the third-line masters. They only needed a platform to practice and develop. The company's initial registration capital was 100 million yuan, and more would be added later. For the jewelry industry, the registered capital of 100 million yuan wasn't too much. It was still relatively little, because it required a lot of money to buy raw materials, but Gu Ning didn't need to do that. She already had the supplies now, and they were worth 600 or 700 million yuan in total. Therefore, in terms of total funds, she had around 700 million yuan in assets, which was a big business. After that, Gu Ning would continue to get jade with her jade eyes. There was no need for her to use money to buy jade supplies. Gu Ning now had more than 200 million yuan in cash. She invested 100 million yuan in jewelry, and still had more than 100 million yuan with her. Find the new ST ovals on n/velbin.com. She planned to cut out 2 high-level jade and sell them to Zhao Yafeng and Master Fu separately. In that way, she would have around 70 million yuan more in cash. Gu Ning asked Zhou Xinghong to help her buy a well-decorated apartment near the downtown of City G. When she came to City G in the future, she needed a place to live. She could not always stay at the hotel. "Oh, boss, we've sold the jade of the hibiscus type, and the money," Zhou Xinghong reminded Gu Ning. Gu Ning's share was about 9 million. "Use the 9 million to buy me an apartment and to cover some expense for the company," Gu Ning said. She wouldn't give 9 million to others out of the blue. "Sure," Zhou Xinghong answered. After the meal, Gu Ning told Zhou Xinghong she wanted to cut out more raw materials. Gu Ning had already cut out several jade today. She didn't want to do it again in the public. She had no intention to cause a sensation. Zhou Xinghong told her they could rent a machine as well as a private room from the raw materials shop. Accordingly, Gu Ning and Zhou Xinghong walked to a raw materials shop. It was around 1 p.m. On their way, Gu Ning called Zhao Yefeng and Master Fu separately. She asked for their location and told them she wanted to sell high-level jade. Zhao Yefeng wasn't in the street of stone gambling, but he remained in the street of antiques, while Master Fu had already gone back home, but when he heard it was a high-level jade, he immediately said he would come soon. It took time to cut a stone. Gu Ning let Zhao Yefeng wait for her call. As for Master Fu, Gu Ning told him to come slowly. She planned to cut out 3 raw materials, and it would take around half an hour. She told Master Fu to arrive around 3:30 p.m. Gu Ning intentionally to let Zhao Yefeng and Master Fu come at different times. She was afraid they would like the same piece of jade, and she wanted to avoid an argument. Although Zhao Yefeng was the first buyer, which was a little unfair to Master Fu, Gu Ning thought it would be fine given both would be high-level jade. When they arrived at a raw materials shop, they rented a machine in a private room to cut out their raw materials. Gu Ning firstly picked up one in the size of half a football, then 2 others which were as small as an apple. They all had high-level jade inside. One of the small ones had the red jade which Gu Ning almost missed. This red jade, Gu Ning decided to make jewelry with it to send Gu Man and Gu Qing as gifts. Gu Ning drew lines on the big one first, then gave it to Zhou Xinghong to cut. Meanwhile, Gu Ning rubbed the raw material with the red jade inside. Although Zhou Xinghong already believed Gu Ning that she had special skills to choose a raw material, he was still excited when the green showed. When the jade was fully cut out, he became more thrilled. Seeing that, Gu Ning just smiled a little. While Zhou Xinghong had cut out an emerald, Gu Ning's raw material showed color too. Zhou Xinghong had a glance, taking in a long breath. He swallowed with great force. His voice was even trembling. Is it red jade? Yes, Gu Ning replied calmly. Having the answer, Zhou Xinghong almost bit his tongue. He was in great shock. The jade in Zhou Xinghong's hand was as big as 2 adult palms. He was amazed when he found out the type of the jade. This is the high-level glass type. It was half-transparent, so it was a high-level jade, no a top-level one. Meanwhile, Gu Ning's red jade widely showed too. It was shiny red with smooth texture and great transparency. It was the high-level coxcomb red. Zhou Xinghong was hit by one shock after another. He couldn't get his mind back all of a sudden. Rub the last one please. Gu Ning was running out of time. So she had to remind Zhou Xinghong. Zhou Xinghong immediately had his mind back and rubbed the last raw material quickly. Although he knew there would be jade in it, he was still excited to see the green show. After a while, Gu Ning's coxcomb red jade was fully rubbed out. It was big enough in Gu Ning's eyes. She planned to make 4 bracelets, 4 pairs of earrings and 4 jade pendants for Gu Man, Gu Qing, Jiang Xinyue and herself. She would also make a thick jade ring for Jiang Su. And the rest of the jade could be made into several jade pendants and pairs of earrings. Gu Qing decided to sell the rest, which would be worth dozens of millions of yuan. Gu Ning had seen the jewelry of the Qin family. She liked their design and carving and planned to let the Qin family do the work for her. This. Zhou Xinghong was holding an emerald which showed half of it. He breathed fast, like his heart was going to jump out. What happened? Gu Ning asked with confusion. This is foolish jade of the glass type. Zhou Xinghong tried very hard to utter a word. He was still in shock. Knowing it was foolish jade, Gu Ning was also astonished. Foolish was the kind of jade with 4 colors, green, red, purple or white. Foolish jade was a symbol of happiness, fortune and health. It was rather rare and super popular. It was worth at least 100 million yuan and was much more expensive than the violet jade of the glass type. Gu Ning immediately changed her mind. She decided to use this foolish jade to make jewelry for her family, while she sold the coxcomb red jade. Gu Ning absorbed the power of the coxcomb red jade, but she didn't absorb the power of the foolish jade. She planned to use the foolish jade to make jewelry for her family. With the power, the jade could last long in great condition. Keep on rubbing. Seeing Zhou Xinghong being so shocked, Gu Ning felt like laughing, but she completely understood his feeling. Fulisha jade was extremely hard to find. It ranked just a little lower than the king's green. Hearing Gu Ning's voice, Zhou Xinghong then got his mind back. He took a deep breath and calmed down. His hands were still trembling because it was so precious. He was nervous, being afraid to damage it by accident. After 10 minutes, Zhou Xinghong finally cut the whole jade out. He handed it to Gu Ning with his hands shaking slightly. Gu Ning took the Fulisha jade. She was deeply attracted to it too. 3 raw materials had already been cut. It was almost 3 p.m. Gu Ning planned to call Zhao Yifeng. "Great, let's go," Gu Ning said. She stood up and cleaned the dirt on her clothes. When they were out of the raw materials shop, Gu Ning sent Zhou Xinghong away to draw up a contract. They would sign it tomorrow. Although she trusted Zhou Xinghong, they still needed to sign a contract, which was also a protection to Zhou Xinghong himself. After Zhou Xinghong was gone, Gu Ning went to a nearby restaurant, then called Zhao Yifeng. Within 3 minutes, Zhao Yifeng appeared in Gu Ning's sight. The street of stone gambling wasn't big. They were merely 100 meters away. "Miss Gu." Zhao Yifeng was excited when he saw Gu Ning. "Please be seated," Gu Ning said. Zhao Yifeng sat down immediately. "What do you want to drink, Mr. Zhao?" Gu Ning asked. Vist and Velben, CM for new updates. "Nothing, let's see the jade first." Zhao Yifeng refused at once. He was eager to see the jade. Gu Ning found it funny. They didn't need to rush at all. "Fine, let's see the jade first. I have 2 high-level jade now, but I can only sell one to you, the other is for Master Fu. Since you're not far away, I'll let you choose first." "Please don't tell Master Fu," Gu Ning said, then took out 2 emeralds from her backpack. Zhao Yifeng was thrilled and amazed when he heard Gu Ning had 2 high-level jade, but he soon felt disappointed that he could only buy 1. Since the other one was for Master Fu, Zhao Yifeng couldn't argue against it. He was still moved that Gu Ning allowed him to be the first buyer. Zhao Yifeng rounded his eyes in shock when the 2 emeralds were on the table. He knew they were high-level jade, but didn't expect there would be a coxcomb red jade. Zhao Yifeng wanted the red jade the minute he saw it. "Miss Gu, I honestly don't know what to say. How can you cut out 4 high-level jade within a day, no, a morning? That's unbearable." Zhao Yifeng swallowed down with great force. He was totally astonished by Gu Ning's luck. If Zhao Yifeng had known Gu Ning had cut out more than just 4 high-level jade, he would have been completely struck dumb. Of course, Gu Ning still had 10 more raw materials with jade inside. "Mr. Zhao, you can choose," Gu Ning said. "The red jade please," Zhao Yifeng immediately replied. "Great, you can have a look first, then tell me your price." Gu Ning gave the red jade to Zhao Yifeng. Zhao Yifeng took the red jade with his hands trembling. "Miss Gu, I'll pay 35 million yuan for it." This coxcomb red jade was ranked at the same level of the old pit ice type jade he had just bought, but the price of the red jade was much higher. 35 million yuan was a reasonable price. "Deal." Gu Ning agreed without hesitation. Then, they both had a wonderful deal. After the deal, Zhao Yifeng left, because Master Fu called. A few minutes later, Master Fu arrived. "Miss Gu, where is the jade? Where is the jade?" Master Fu raised his voice in excitement before he approached Gu Ning. He walked fast towards her. If his 2 servants hadn't supported him, he would have fallen down. Gu Ning immediately stood up to welcome Master Fu. "Please slow down. The jade won't escape. A high-level jade. I must be quick. I am afraid it'll run away." Master Fu said seriously, like the jade would really run away from him. Before Gu Ning could say another word, Master Fu urged, "Come on, show me the jade." "Please have a seat first." "I'll show you at once," Gu Ning said. She immediately took the jade of the glass type out of her backpack. Although Master Fu knew it was a high-level jade, he was still thrilled and amazed to see it with his own eyes. "Great jade. Great jade." Master Fu took the jade at once. He was staring at it with fondness, but in his heart, he still felt a little disappointed. If it had been a top-level old pit glass species, it would be much better. "Girl, I'll pay 30 million yuan for this jade of the glass type." "How about that?" Master Fu said. "No problem," Gu Ning answered. It was a reasonable price. For now, Gu Ning had around 270 million yuan with her. Haha, I like your efficient way of making a deal. Great, I'll transfer the money to you now. Gu Ning's efficiency left a good impression on Master Fu again. He immediately made a call to transfer the money. Girl, if you don't mind, you can call me Grandpa Fu. If you need my support in the future, just let me know. I'll spare no effort to help you, Master Fu said. He sincerely wanted to become friends with this young lady. Master Fu was sophisticated. He had a belief that Gu Ning was a promising teenager. Grandpa Fu, I do need your help now. Gu Ning didn't hesitate to ask for help from Master Fu. Oh, what happened? Tell me. Master Fu was a little surprised and curious. Get the L-test VLS at .o/v/e/l/buy.co. Well, I plan to register a jewelry company, but I also know that this process is very troublesome. So, do you have any acquaintances in the Industry and Commerce Bureau? Could you please help me make the process smoother, faster? Of course, I'll prepare all the required documents. Since Master Fu was willing to help, Gu Ning naturally couldn't waste the chance. Actually, she decided to make full use of her network. There was nothing wrong with it anyway. What? You're going to open a jewelry company? Knowing that, Master Fu was amazed. This young girl was very ambitious. She even had the nerve to open a jewelry company. Yes, Gu Ning replied seriously. How much is the registered capital? Master Fu asked. The initial capital is 100 million, which will be added to in the future, Gu Ning said. Master Fu took a long breath in. Even though 100 million wasn't much in the jewelry industry, it was a huge amount of money to a young girl. This girl wasn't an ordinary teenager. But, although Gu Ning was an extraordinarily smart girl, it was risky to start up a company. Master Fu asked with uncertainty, Are you sure you're going to open a jewelry company? To start up a business needs more than just money. You must have the ability to run it, with stable supplies. Besides, you're a student now. Do you have enough time to manage it? Master Fu wasn't going to stop Gu Ning. He was just worried that Gu Ning didn't fully understand the rules and might lose money. Gu Ning knew Master Fu cared about her. She replied with sincerity, Grandpa Fu, I'm fully prepared. Moreover, I have professional staff to help me run the company. There is nothing to worry about. Since Gu Ning was confident, Master Fu didn't want to let her down. Great, it is no big deal. I'll help you with the registration. Oh, how old are you now? Thanks, Grandpa Fu. I'm already 18. I'm an adult, Gu Ning said. But I still need to find a shop. I'll contact you once I find the shop. Sure, no problem. I'll handle it, Master Fu said delightedly. Thank you so much, Grandpa Fu, Gu Ning said. Master Fu didn't stay much longer before he left. After Master Fu was gone, Gu Ning left too. She went to the street of antiques. Gu Ning didn't want to collect antiques. She simply wanted to take a chance. Thus she didn't walk into stores, but looked around the small stands outside. Although not every piece in the stores was authentic, the real one would be labeled with a price on it. It was expensive. After a while, Gu Ning felt disappointed. She didn't see a single real antique yet. She continued looking for a longer time. Finally, she found an object with power at a small stand. It was a wine cup. Its power was very thick, which meant it must have a long history. Hey, how much is this? Gu Ning pointed at a wine cup. Seeing Gu Ning was a young girl, the stand owner assumed she wouldn't buy it, so he replied perfunctorily, It's from the Qianlong period. 10,000 yuan. An object from the Qianlong period. How was it only worth 10,000 yuan? It was worth at least 500,000 yuan. Therefore, it must be a fake one in the stand owner's eyes. But this time, the stand owner was wrong. This wine cup was an authentic one. Gu Ning only wasn't sure which period it was from. Since it was real, Gu Ning didn't care about the 10,000 yuan at all. She immediately took out a pile of bills from her backpack for the stand owner. The stand owner didn't expect this teenage girl would really buy it without bargaining. He was surprised. He had actually believed that this teenage girl wouldn't buy it, so he deliberately set such a high price. Otherwise, this would only be sold at the price of several hundred yuan. Was it a real one? The stand owner himself didn't believe there were any authentic antiques on his little stand. It wasn't easy to get a real one after all. This young girl must know nothing about it. She merely liked it. The stand owner was apparently happy to sell it at a high price. He happily took the money in case the buyer would regret. However, he didn't know he actually was the one who should regret. The stand owner took the money, and Gu Ning got her wine cup. The deal was done. No one could regret. Gu Ning put the wine cup into her backpack standing up. Right at that moment, something broke under her feet. There were a lot of broken china pieces. A man shouted in pain, "Oh, shit! My green bean glaze vase." After that, the young man glared at Gu Ning. He yelled in anger, "It's you! You knocked my vase over on the ground. Now it's broken. You have to pay me the money for it." Gu Ning immediately knew she encountered someone who intentionally caused an accident. That wasn't unusual in the antique industry. Someone would use a fake antique to deliberately cause an accident and demanded compensation at the same price as a real antique. Someone like that could easily succeed because they always chose the weak ones to take advantage of. And Gu Ning appeared to be a teenage girl who must be easily scared. Thus she became the target. Nonetheless, no one was willing to help in case they got involved in the trouble. But the man made a wrong decision. Although Gu Ning was a teenage girl, she didn't allow anyone to bully her now. "I did not touch your vase," Gu Ning said calmly. The man simply tried to trap her, but she truly didn't touch his vase. "What? If you didn't touch it, my vase wouldn't have fallen," the man argued. "So what?" Gu Ning asked. "This is a green bean glaze vase from the Kangxi period. It's worth at least 500,000 yuan on the market. Since you're a young girl, 500,000 yuan would be enough." Gu Ning sneered. The man was literally shameless. "Well, I can compensate you, but your words aren't enough. So, I need to let an expert identify it. If it is truly worth 500,000 yuan, I'll pay you right away," Gu Ning said. The man panicked a little. His tone softened. "Don't need to bother. It costs a lot to see the expert. I have a certificate of authenticity myself. It can prove this vase is real." Saying this, then man pulled out his so-called certificate of authenticity. Gu Ning didn't believe it, of course. "It's not a big deal. I'll pay the expert fee," she added. The man stopped a second. He now realized he had made a wrong decision, but he didn't want to give up. "I don't have time to waste with you. I need the money now. Pay me right now, or I'll call the police," the man warned. He immediately took out his phone, like he was going to call. Gu Ning pulled the corner of her lips. She knew the man was threatening her. Then she said airily, "Fine, go on." The man didn't expect Gu Ning wouldn't be scared at all, which left him in a dilemma. Meanwhile, a nearby man suddenly stopped him. "Man, don't be so annoyed. We can negotiate anyway. She's merely a teenager. It'll be bad for her future if she is arrested by the police. Why don't you give her a bargain?" The man seemed like he was helping Gu Ning, but he was actually an accomplice. Unfortunately, Gu Ning saw through them clearly. "What's going on here?" An old man's voice sounded at the same time. Before long, a group of people stepped into the crowd. Two old men who were around 70 walked in front. One of them unexpectedly was Master Fu. "Girl, it's you? What happened?" Seeing it was Gu Ning, Master Fu was a little surprised. It seemed Gu Ning was in trouble. But the young man who demanded compensation suddenly changed his face. Obviously, he knew the group. "Oh, it's just an accident. Just an accident." Before Gu Ning could open her mouth, the man said at once. His made a U-turn on his attitude. He was afraid of these two old men before him. No one in the antique market didn't know Master Fu and Master Yen. Those two were the authorities. No one dared to offend them. Especially Master Yen. He wasn't only the father of the mayor of City G, but also an undeniable expert in the antique field. He could tell whether the vase was real or not by his own eyes. Those two men who wanted to take advantage of Gu Ning were shocked by the fact that Gu Ning knew Master Yan and Master Fu. But Master Yan and Master Fu immediately understood what had happened when they saw the broken china pieces on the ground. Both were upset. It wasn't unusual for such accidents to happen, but when it happened to Gu Ning, the perpetrators were in trouble now. Master Fu regarded Gu Ning as his friend and his granddaughter. He would naturally protect her. Thus, Master Fu was displeased and asked, "Is it a real accident?" He didn't believe it apparently. The young man had a layer of cold sweat around his forehead at once. He did want to say yes, but it obviously wasn't a wise answer. At the end, the young man couldn't bear the pressure from Master Fu any longer. He apologized, "Master Fu, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I promise I won't do it again." "The person you should apologize to isn't me," Master Fu was mad. The young man immediately turned to Gu Ning. He even bent to a low level. "Miss, I'm so sorry. Please accept my apologies." Read the latest stories and novelbin.com. I accept your apologies this time, but I'll have my people here to keep an eye on you. If you dare to do that again, you'll be in jail the next time, Gu Ning said. She threatened them to stop them from doing it again. Sure. Those two answered at once. They were like rats on the street now. The only thing in their mind now was to leave as soon as possible. After that, they immediately ran away. It happens often in this street. You must be careful from now on, Master Fu said to Gu Ning. If they hadn't arrived on time, Gu Ning would have been taken advantage of. I will, Grandpa Fu. Even though Gu Ning wouldn't allow anyone else to bully her now, she replied to Master Fu's kindness with sincerity. Well, now let me introduce you. This is Master Yan, the president of the Antiques Association, Master Fu said to Gu Ning. Nice to meet you, Master Yan, Gu Ning greeted politely. You too. Master Yan was a serious man, especially before the young generation. So he replied airily when Gu Ning greeted him, but he didn't disdain her at all. Well, now if you'll excuse me, I'll leave now, Gu Ning said. After Master Fu gave her an affirmative nod, Gu Ning left. Later, she used her jade eyes to scan the objects around her. Within a few meters, she found out another object with power. It was an ink slab with a strong power. Gu Ning immediately went over. She asked the price, then paid the money at once. She only paid 5,000 yuan for an authentic antique. Master Fu and Master Yan were not far behind Gu Ning. Both of them witnessed what Gu Ning had done, and they were shocked. They didn't know whether Gu Ning understood antiques or not, but she casually bought one without identification. Girl, you, Master Fu walked to Gu Ning quickly. He wanted to stop her, but he was late. The deal was done. Master Fu sighed heavily. Do you know antiques, young girl? Master Yan followed up. His tone was still serious. Although Master Yan disliked her behavior, he didn't judge her for that since it was none of his business. Not really, Gu Ning said. Then why did you buy this ink slab without second thought? Master Fu criticized. He expected better from Gu Ning. Because of my instinct. May I invite the two masters to have a cup of tea? Master Yan, could you please help me identify this object? Gu Ning said. Master Yan was an expert of antiques. He had a special feeling for antiques, and never said no to identifying an object. He only thought it wasn't necessary to have tea. But seeing Gu Ning being so confident, like this ink slab was a real one, Master Yan was more curious now. If the ink slab had been real, it was inconvenient to identify it here. Thus Master Yan answered, fine. They went towards a nearby tea house. They had a private room since they were all important figures. Before they sat down, Master Yan opened his mouth eagerly. Girl, let me have a look now. The ink slab was held in Gu Ning's hand. Once Master Yan opened his mouth, Gu Ning handed it to him directly. Master Yan took the ink slab and was absorbed in identifying it. Both Master Fu and Gu Ning stayed quiet, tasting the tea. Master Yan kept on observing, touching and cleaning it for a while. At the end, Master Yan's eyes lit up with delight and excitement. It's real. It is real. This is an ink slab from the Qianlong period. It belongs to the famous poet, book painter and Liezhou prefect, Zhang Wentao. It must be old pit species too. What? Hearing that, Master Fu was also surprised as well as excited. Such a precious antique was found by a young teenage girl, which surprised Master Yan more. He asked, "Girl, did you really find this out by your instinct?" To be honest, Master Yan didn't believe it was that simple. Gu Ning had been so confident, as if she already knew it was a real one. Gu Ning also understood her excuse wasn't persuasive, but she didn't know anything about antiques. Thus she had to stick to her excuse. Yes. Master Yan and Master Fu still couldn't believe it, but since the girl said so, they didn't want to ask for more. Master Yan looked at the ink slab in his hands. He was growingly thrilled. "Girl, do you want to sell it?" "If you want to, I can pay you the market price," Master Yan said. Not only was Master Yan an expert of antiques, he was also an expert of calligraphy. He loved those tools for calligraphy. "Well, Master Yan, I knew Girl Gu before you. If she wants to sell it, I must be the first buyer." You can't grab it from me." Master Fu immediately stood up wanting to snatch the ink slab. Although Master Fu wasn't as professional as Master Yan, he was an aficionado. He didn't like calligraphy, but he loved to collect ancient objects. Gu Ning felt embarrassed. She didn't want to see those two respectable seniors to have a battle over an ink slab. Gu Ning understood Master Fu wanted to have priority because they met first. Master Yan, on the other side, protected the ink slab tightly in his arms at once. He looked at Master Fu in an aggressive way. "Master Fu, you don't like calligraphy at all. Why do you need it?" "I don't like calligraphy, but I love ancient objects," Master Fu said. Master Yan was truly afraid Gu Ning would sell the ink slab to Master Fu because the two had met each other before him. He had to use his ace in the hole. "If you don't compete with me, I'll give you a bottle of peach blossom wine of 10 years, Master Yan said to Master Fu. Hearing that, Master Fu's eyes were bright. He stopped competing for the ink slab, but bargained 2 bottles. Master Yan frowned. He was reluctant to do that. But for the ink slab, he compromised at the end. "Fine, 2 bottles." Master Yan clenched his teeth. After that, Master Fu was pleased. He went back to his seat. And Master Yan then realized Gu Ning hadn't agreed to sell the ink slab yet. Read the latest stories and novelbin.com. "Well, girl, could you please sell it to Grandpa Yan?" Master Yan looked at Gu Ning with sincerity. It seemed the ink slab was a part of his body. If Gu Ning took it back, it would be like cutting meat from his flesh. Master Yan right now was completely different from that serious old man before. Actually, the reason why Gu Ning invited Master Yan to identify the ink slab was that she intended to sell it to him. She wasn't sure Master Yan would want it, but since he was an expert of antiques, he probably wasn't willing to miss a real antique. "Of course," Gu Ning replied. Master Yan was more than happy now. "Very well, girl. I'm not going to lie to you either. This ink slab is from the Qianlong period. It belongs to the famous poet, book painter and Liezhou prefect, Zhang Wentao. It is worth around 5 million yuan. I'll pay you 5 million yuan. It's an acceptable price for both of us." "No problem," Gu Ning agreed without hesitation. She didn't care about the price as long as it was acceptable. "Girl, if you're lucky again next time, you must sell it to me first." Although he stopped competing with Master Yan, Master Fu was still a little displeased. Gu Ning smiled slightly. "Grandpa Fu, you've abandoned the ink slab for 2 bottles of peach blossom wine. I assume you must be a wine lover. I have a wine cup with me here. Do you want to have a look?" Saying this, Gu Ning then took out the wine cup from her backpack. Both Master Yan and Master Fu were struck dumb for a second. They all thought to themselves, is she being lucky again? If she had been lucky again, she must be a lucky girl indeed. Or, she must have her own ability. Master Fu sat close to Gu Ning. Once she pulled the cup out, Master Fu grabbed it and stared at it. But he wasn't an expert after all. He then immediately gave it to Master Yan. "Master Yan, take a look now." With doubts in heart, Master Yan took the wine cup from Master Fu at once. The wine cup was round, straight, covered with a deep abdomen, a beast ring and 3 feet. It was the shape of the wine cups from the Tang dynasty. Then Master Yan focused on its material and marks. Master Fu sat aside looking at Master Yan with anxiety. He opened his mouth several times, wanting to ask for the result, but didn't want to bother him as well. Master Yan was increasingly excited. It's real. It's from the Tang dynasty. It's a royal wine cup from the Wu administration. What? Really? Master Fu jumped up from his seat out of excitement. Seeing that, Gu Ning felt worried for Master Fu. She didn't want to see him fall. Yes. It must be a real one. There are several royal wine cups in the museum too. I'm familiar with them, Master Yan replied. Ha ha, ha ha. I like it. Master Fu laughed out loud in happiness. He was afraid Master Yan would compete with him, so he grabbed the wine cup back. Both Gu Ning and Master Yan were speechless. Although Master Yan liked this wine cup from the Tang dynasty, he had just gotten an ink slab. He wouldn't compete with Master Fu again. Master Yan, how much is this wine cup? Master Fu asked. Those wine cups in the museum were worth 300,000 yuan each 10 years ago. By now, its price must be 10 times higher. Around 3 million yuan, Master Yan said. Although this wasn't the royal object used by Empress Wu, it was an object in the palace. And the quality was superior. It must have been used by a royal, so the price was still not low. Great, then I'll pay 3 million yuan. How about that girl Gu? Master Fu asked Gu Ning. No problem, Gu Ning replied. After the deal, they transferred the money without signing contracts. New N0vel chapters are published on N0v/e/lb/in/co/m. Gu Ning trusted those two old men. They wouldn't regret or break rules. Besides, the deals were done. Even if the antiques weren't real, they could do nothing about it. After everything was done, Master Yan and Master Fu then realized something important. Master Yan asked Gu Ning, "Did you buy the wine cup by chance too?" Yes, Gu Ning said honestly. Both Master Yan and Master Fu took a long breath in after Gu Ning's affirmation. Even though they had no idea how Gu Ning could know these two objects were authentic, they were surprised by her unbelievable luck. Before long, Gu Ning asked to leave. Master Fu intended to invite Gu Ning to have dinner with them, but Gu Ning refused because she had something else to deal with. Before she left, Master Yan gave her a name card. Girl, if you don't mind, you can call me Grandpa Yan, like the way you call Master Fu. If you need my support in the future, you can call me. And of course, if you have any other real antiques, you can let me have a look first, but I'll only buy one if I like it. Apparently, Master Yan wanted to make a friend with Gu Ning. No need to worry, Grandpa Yan. If I find out any authentic antiques in the future I'll call you first, Gu Ning said and took the name card. She didn't have her own name card, so she pulled out a piece of paper and a pen. She wrote down her name and phone number on the paper, then handed it to Master Yan. Hey! You can't only turn to Master Yan. You must turn to me as well. Master Fu said. He didn't want to be left out. I will. Gu Ning felt like laughing. These two seniors were really pleasant. After Gu Ning was gone, Master Yan couldn't help but compliment, "This girl is truly extraordinary." Indeed. She's even cut out 3 high-level jade this morning and made 100 million yuan at once. Master Fu added. What? How is it possible? She cut out 3 high-level jade in a morning. Master Yan was shocked. He had never heard of such a thing before. Master Fu didn't mention Gu Ning was going to open a jewelry company. If he had said so, Master Yan would probably be shocked dumb. Master Fu knew what he could say, and what he shouldn't. Gu Ning's company hadn't registered yet. It would be inappropriate to say it now. Gu Ning had already called her driver when she had left the street of stone gambling. Her driver had arrived half an hour ago, but Gu Ning had met Master Fu and Master Yan halfway, and she was half an hour late. When she went out of the street of antiques, she saw a familiar car and went over. But when she opened the car door, she found the driver was a different man. Before Gu Ning could ask, the young man opened his mouth first. Nice to meet you, Miss Gu. The driver who drove you here felt a little uncomfortable, so I replaced him to be your driver today. Gu Ning didn't doubt that. She nodded, then climbed into the car. The car was started then left. Driving away from the street of antiques, the car didn't go back the same way that they came here. Before Gu Ning could ask again, the young driver explained, "It's rush hour now. There is a traffic jam ahead. We can go another road, and save time. We'll be back to the hotel within an hour." Gu Ning wasn't familiar with City G, but she knew it must be super crowded in rush hour. Thus she didn't doubt the driver's explanation. Like what the young driver had said, he had chosen a less crowded road. But around 20 minutes later, the car drove into an alley in a remote place. Gu Ning then realized something must be wrong. She immediately seized the young driver's neck and said coldly, "Stop the car." The young driver didn't expect Gu Ning would realize so soon, and was so strong. When his neck was seized, he could hardly breathe. He stopped the car unconsciously. "Tell me, who sent you?" Gu Ning asked. The young driver didn't answer her question. Before he could, several men ran to surround the car from 2 meters away. Gu Ning was annoyed. She directly knocked the young driver unconscious. Did the girl just knock the driver unconscious? A man standing in front of the car saw what had just happened inside it. He said in surprise to another man beside him. "What?" The other man was also surprised. A teenage girl knocked a grown-up man unconscious? But the man wasn't frightened by Gu Ning at all. He ordered instead, "Go pull the girl out now." However, before anyone came forward, Gu Ning opened the car door herself. Her jade eyes was full of power now, and she was full of energy too. She wasn't afraid of these men outside at all. Gu Ning stepped out herself, so the man who planned to pull her out stopped. When they saw Gu Ning's face, all the men were amazed by her beauty. What a beautiful young girl! Gu Ning coldly glanced over those men before her. They were all aged between 20 and 30, and behaved like gangsters. They must be gangsters. Gu Ning thought to herself. The man who was their head was around 30. He was a bulky man in a black sweater and loose pants. He seemed violent. If an ordinary person had seen him, he or she would be terrified, but Gu Ning wasn't an ordinary girl. She wasn't scared at all. "Li Jinjin sent you here, right?" It was an affirmative tone. Gu Ning only had bad blood with Li Jinjin when she was in City G. No one would do that except her. Hearing that, those men were apparently struck dumb for a second. They were surprised Gu Ning knew who was behind them. They soon understood Gu Ning must have had bad blood with Li Jinjin earlier, so she knew what was happening. Therefore the head man didn't want to hide. "Young girl, since you know who you had bad blood with, you must know you've done something terribly wrong. We're here today to teach you a lesson." "Sorry," the head said. Knowing that, Gu Ning despised Li Jinjin. Li Jinjin didn't even bother to hide herself. It seemed she was too confident. Indeed, Li Jinjin was so confident that she believed Gu Ning could only yield to these grown-up men. "Oh, since you do know someone can never be irritated, aren't you afraid I am one of those who you should never have bad blood with?" Gu Ning asked calmly. She didn't seem scared at all. Hearing that, these men were struck dumb for a second before laughing out loud. "Young girl, do you know who we are? We're from the Qing Gang." "Qing Gang? Have you heard of us? We're one of the 2 biggest gangs in this mainland. And you can never get revenge on us," the man said with disdain. Gu Ning felt nervous. She didn't expect they were from the Qing Gang. Anyway, since they were here to cause her trouble first, Gu Ning decided to fight against them till the end. Besides, she couldn't believe the head of the gang would be an irrational man. If so, how could he be able to be the head? How would he manage his followers? "I don't want to get revenge," Gu Ning compressed her lips, and said lightly. When those gangsters believed she must be terrified, Gu Ning continued. "Because you're not able to defeat me." After that, Gu Ning attacked them first. She came straight at the so-called head, kicking abruptly at his abdomen. Gu Ning had moved too fast, so the man didn't have time to react. He was hit right in his abdomen. He was then kicked up in the air like he had been hit by a heavy object. Right on the heels of that, he fell down heavily on the ground, moaning in pain. The other 3 men rounded their eyes in shock. What had just happened? They couldn't believe their eyes. Were they in a dream? Gu Ning didn't care what they were thinking at all. She directly attacked another man. Although the second man noticed Gu Ning's coming, he was hit by a fist right on his cheek before he could fight back. The second man fell straight on the ground spitting blood with several teeth knocked out. The other two gangsters now felt a little scared, but they didn't want to run away like cowards. Thus they raised their fists, running at Gu Ning. Gu Ning took off her backpack, throwing it to hit the front man dashing at her. The front man was hit on his head by a great force then knocked against a nearby wall. He fell from dizziness afterward. Gu Ning used her backpack to hit the last man, but the man escaped quickly. However, Gu Ning immediately kicked at her leg aiming at the man's knee. The last man lost his balance all of a sudden, bending his knee. "Gee, are you proposing to me?" "Sorry, you don't deserve me," Gu Ning humiliated him. She then hit the man right on his head with her backpack again. The man wasn't able to avoid it this time and fell on the ground. Four gangsters were all beaten to the ground by Gu Ning within minutes. Although they were not hit till handicapped, they couldn't stand up anymore. Gu Ning didn't leave right away. She walked to their head instead. What do you want to do?" The head was frightened. He wanted to escape, but couldn't stand up, let alone run away. Gu Ning didn't answer his question. She picked up his phone on the ground and asked, "Did Li Jinjin call you?" F0 low new hapters at nov/el/bin/.com. Yes, the man immediately replied. Then, Gu Ning opened his phone, checking his recent calls. Li Jinjin's name was really on it. She had called at 2:15 p.m. and the call had lasted for 7 minutes. "What did Li Jinjin want you to do to me? How much for it?" Gu Ning continued. She wanted us to rape you, and take a video of it, then put it on the internet. She paid us 100,000 yuan for it, the man answered. Gu Ning sneered, but her face looked cold. Her eyes were full of upset. Rape, what a usual way a woman used to deal with another one. Xiao Feifei had done that before. Gu Ning assumed the women who she would have bad blood with in the future probably would do the same thing. She didn't doubt that. But Xiao Feifei had only paid several thousand yuan, while Li Jinjin paid 100,000 yuan. Was Gu Ning's dignity worth only 100,000 yuan? No, Gu Ning's dignity was priceless. This time, Gu Ning really wouldn't forgive Li Jinjin. Although Xiao Feifei had done the same thing to her, Xiao Feifei couldn't threaten her at all. She could punish Xiao Feifei in a gentle way, but as for Li Jinjin, who turned to the Qing gang for help, which was a big trouble. Gu Ning was completely irritated. She used the man's phone, calling Li Jinjin back directly. At the same time, Li Jinjin was having a meal with Qin Yifan in a restaurant. The atmosphere was quite harmonious. "Yifan, I heard there is a movie called Growing Up Together, which is very popular recently. Why don't we go and watch it together?" Li Jinjin invited Qin Yifan with anticipation in her eyes. She wanted to watch the movie for a reason. The movie mainly told a story about a couple who grew up together. She and Qin Yifan also grew up together. Thus, Li Jinjin intended to use the movie to express her feelings to Qin Yifan. Although this wasn't the first time Li Jinjin told Qin Yifan her feelings for him and she had been refused many times, she kept trying because she loved Qin Yifan. Moreover, their marriage would be of great help to the Li family. "Sorry, I have something to deal with. You can go with your friends," Qin Yifan said. It was simply his way of refusal. "Every time I invite you to watch a movie, you're always busy." Although Li Jinjin knew it would end up like that, she felt hurt when she heard the answer. She had abased herself before him to the best of her ability. Why would he keep being so cold? Li Jinjin was a beautiful, sexy and well-educated woman from a rich family. She had everything a man could expect from a woman. And she had countless admirers, but Qin Yifan was clearly not one of them. She wasn't going to be his younger sister or girlfriend. She wanted to be his wife. "Yifan," Li Jinjin wanted to say more, but her phone rang. Li Jinjin's phone was placed on the edge of the dining table. The caller was Lu. Li Jinjin felt nervous for a second, then she was delighted. I need to take this call." Li Jinjin took her phone immediately standing up and left her seat. She didn't want Qin Yifan to hear a word. Li Jinjin ran straight outside. She answered the phone. Out of excitement, she asked first before the other side could open the mouth, "Hey, Lu, did you finish it? I'll transfer the rest of the 50,000 yuan to your account later." Oh, Miss Li, my dignity is only worth 100,000 yuan in your eyes? Gu Ning sneered. Hearing Gu Ning's voice, Li Jinjin trembled in shock. She almost threw her phone away. Why? How could it be possible? What had happened? Why did they take the money but fail to do what she had asked? Miss Li, I'll bear in mind what happened today. And you will pay for it. Be careful. Gu Ning warned her plainly. You dare to threaten me? Although Li Jinjin felt afraid, she was irritated by Gu Ning's words. Her face changed, she looked vicious now. Yes, I did threaten you, Gu Ning admitted without hesitation. Li Jinjin was in a rage now, but also felt regretful. After a while, Gu Ning added, Miss Li, since you're capable of doing that, you have to bear the consequences. Then Gu Ning hung up the phone before Li Jinjin could say a word. Li Jinjin was so mad that she almost smashed her phone. She actually didn't know Gu Ning's background, but since Gu Ning had Lu's phone to call her, Gu Ning must not be an ordinary person. Thus Li Jinjin felt uneasy about Gu Ning's threat. Now, Li Jinjin was truly not in the mood to watch a movie. She forced herself to finish the meal with Qin Yifan, then asked him to drive her home. She was worried something terrible would happen to her on her way home. Li Jinjin stopped asking Qin Yifan to keep her company, which made him happy. But if he had known the reason, he would probably not have been so calm. On the other side, Gu Ning hung up the phone, then directly threw it back to the man. She turned around and left. Gu Ning didn't know whether they would try to get revenge on her. All she could do was protect herself. Gu Ning walked to the car. She pulled the unconscious man away from the driver's seat, then dumped him on the ground. She sat inside herself. Gu Ning started the car and left. After Gu Ning was gone, at the opposite side of the alley, a black Maserati stopped there. The car window moved slowly down. There were two men sitting inside, watching the way Gu Ning left. On the driver's seat, a young man who was around 25 was in a casual suit. His face was full of amazement and excitement. Wow, I didn't expect this young girl could be so strong and powerful. I feel like having a fight with her. You'll lose for sure, a cold voice sounded from the passenger seat. The young man immediately felt upset. The man who sat on the passenger seat was several years older. He was almost 30 with beautiful features. He had an air of power. Hearing that, the young man was displeased. He complained, Boss, don't upset your own friend, all right? Can you defeat them all within a minute? The man inquired. The young man felt shamed. Apparently, he couldn't. Although he could beat them down within a few minutes, he couldn't do it the way the girl had done it. Xianfeng, find out who these guys' head is. How dare them take a buyer's money secretly without my permission, the man said coldly. He was obviously annoyed. The man was actually the chairman of the Qin gang, Sitiyi. Although Qin gang was a gang, it had principles and rules. It was unacceptable to take a buyer's money secretly and charge the fee of protection, which was amoral. Of course, even though there were rules, some people would break them as they liked. Even in the country, there were many corrupt officials. As long as they hadn't been discovered, they would continue to do amoral things. Yes, boss. Chu Xianfeng answered. Gu Ning stopped aside after a short distance, not because she was lost, but she needed to find her real driver. She now was half worried and half doubtful towards the driver. Check new CHDers at novilbin.com. What if the driver was one of the gangsters? What if the driver was in trouble himself? Gu Ning pulled over the car, taking out her phone. She called the driver at once. Unfortunately, no one answered. Right when Gu Ning was about to call the police, a noise sounded from the trunk. An idea suddenly dawned on Gu Ning. She immediately clicked a button, then stepped out of the car, walking to the trunk. There he was. The real driver who had been supposed to take her was now tightly tied up, struggling with his mouth stuck full of a rag in the trunk. Seeing Gu Ning, his eyes lit up at once. He knew Gu Ning must be here to rescue him. He mumbled in excitement to Gu Ning. Gu Ning was also relieved to see the driver was safe. She immediately untied him. The rag in his mouth was removed. The driver was free. He apologized at once. Miss Gu, I am so sorry. I have no idea why they did this to me. Thank you so much for rescuing me. Thinking of that, the driver was still trembling with terror. I'm sorry. It's my fault actually. They were targeting me, Gu Ning said, then she told him everything that had just happened. What? The driver was shocked, but he didn't blame Gu Ning since she was also a victim. Because a lot had just happened, when Gu Ning finally arrived at the hotel, it was already 8 p.m. Gu Ning was starving, so she immediately called room service. She had planned to buy clothes in the downtown this afternoon, but she didn't have time now. Although the shopping center was still open now, Gu Ning wasn't only going to buy clothes for herself. She would buy some for Gu Man and the family of Gu Qing too. Thus an hour wasn't enough for her to shop. Gu Ning didn't have another change of clothing. She had to wash her clothes tonight, and hopefully it would dry tomorrow. She had her school uniform in her backpack, but she didn't want to wear it. It would be too obvious in the crowd. Her dinner hadn't arrived yet. Gu Ning called Gu Man to chat with her for a short time. Then she talked with Chu Pei Han and others in their WeChat group for a while. The evening wind was cool and mild. It danced with people walking by. Sometimes, it was a bit chilly. In the downtown of City G, there was the biggest entertainment place, King's Club. In the noisy club, colorful lights shone. Men and women crazily shook their waists on the dance floor, and the air was full of desire and luxury. But in a private room which was set apart from the main hall, there was only light music and gentle talks. In this huge private room, there were only 5 men without a single bar girl. Apparently, something special was going on here. F*CK, we were just F*King lucky this time. We even met the legendary Red Flame team captain, Red Wolf, who has killed 7 of our people. All the troops were almost wiped out. Fortunately, we ran fast. Otherwise, we were F*Ked, a young man groaned and slammed the cigarette butt into the ground, seemingly venting the anger in his heart. I've heard that Red Wolf is very powerful. I didn't care, but I've witnessed this time. He's really very powerful. He could fight with more than a dozen people and killed 7. He only got shot twice, a bulky muscular man with a naked upper body said. Although he hated his opponent to death, he admired him too. Luckily he got shot and wasn't able to track us. Or we would be found, a relatively short man with a vicious look said. But we can't be too careless. After all, the other team is the captain of the important national team. Maybe he will send someone to follow us. So we'll be evacuated as soon as we successfully trade tomorrow. But why do they have to choose the commercial building in the city center? There are so many people there. Aren't they afraid of being discovered? F*CK. They're simply afraid that we get the money, but don't give them the goods. So the most secure place is where there are many people around. If we really don't give them the goods, they will immediately cause a riot and bring the police. In that case, we can't leave either. This isn't the first time. Couldn't they trust us? The object is worth 100 million yuan this time. It is reasonable to be careful. In another private room, there was a laptop on the table. The screen showed the picture of the above men's room. A man sat before the laptop with earphones on. He had heard everything they had discussed. This man was Leng Xiaoting. He had fine delicate features, but wore a cold expression. His eyes were as deep as the ocean with an air of power. He seemed like a king. Behind Leng Xiaoting, there stood 2 men. Both of them stared at the screen too, but didn't hear what they had said. Boss, what's their next movement? Seeing Leng Xiaoting take off his earphones, a man asked. They're going to trade at the business building in the downtown. Keep an eye on their location, Leng Xiaoting said calmly with a serious look on face. Leng Xiaoting didn't kill them right now. He intended to use them as bait. Their head wasn't here, and the object was in the head's hands. If he killed them now, their head would be alarmed. They actually had no idea where their head was. If they had known, they would have come to him and killed him right away. The next day, Gu Ning didn't get up till 8 a.m. Gu Ning was actually awake earlier, but she had nothing to do. The shopping center was open at 8 a.m., so she didn't leave her warm bed till that time. Besides, Gu Ning would fly back to City F at 2 p.m. this afternoon. She had a whole morning to shop in the shopping center. She didn't need to rush at all. She also needed to sign the contract with Zhou Xinghong in the shopping center today. The appointed time was 11 a.m., which was a good time for lunch. Discover W stories on no/e/lbin.com. Gu Ning went downstairs when she got up. She checked out afterwards. The shopping center wasn't far away. It took around 20 minutes to walk there. Thus there was no need for Gu Ning to take a taxi. She walked there directly. She had her breakfast halfway. When she finally arrived at the shopping center, it was almost 9 a.m. Today was a Sunday. There were already many people around in the shopping center at 9 a.m. Female clothes were on the second floor, so Gu Ning went straight to the second floor. The shopping center was so big. It seemed it would never end. Gu Ning suddenly didn't know where to start. She walked randomly to a direction, scanning through the clothes on both sides. If she liked the style of a brand, she would walk inside. After a while, Gu Ning found an international designer brand. It was extremely expensive. But no matter how expensive it was nothing to Gu Ning now. "Nice to meet you, welcome." A saleswoman immediately came to her when Gu Ning stepped in. "Miss, may I help? May I have a look at the clothes which are suitable for a woman around 40? Gu Ning asked. "Sure, miss, please follow me." The saleswoman guided Gu Ning to an area. Gu Ning had a look. Nothing she liked. "Could you please tell me the body type of your relative?" the saleswoman inquired. "She has the same body as me. If I can wear it, it will fit her too," Gu Ning answered. Gu Ning was 167 centimeters tall and slim. Then, the saleswoman chose a piece of clothing, showing it to Gu Ning. "Miss, how about this one?" "Well, it looks good." Gu Ning looked at it and liked it at once. It would fit Gu Man. She was about to take it and have a closer look. But before Gu Ning's hand touched the piece of clothing, another hand grabbed it first. "I like this one. I'm going to try it." It was a woman who was at her early 40s. She was in luxurious clothes, but it was only limited to her appearance. She didn't have the same good manners. A woman with good manners would never grab a thing from another person's hand. "Stop there," Gu Ning criticized. She was upset. Gu Ning couldn't tolerate that the woman grabbed the piece of clothing from her hand. But the woman walked away as if she hadn't heard Gu Ning's voice. Seeing that, Gu Ning frowned as a look of annoyance crossed her face. She strode ahead and stood in the woman's way. The woman almost knocked into Gu Ning. She was a little scared by Gu Ning and shouted, "What do you want to do, young girl? Do you want to hurt me? You should be responsible for that." The woman's shout attracted attention from others in the shop. People immediately surrounded them to have a look. "Sorry, I chose this piece of clothing before you," Gu Ning said calmly. If she didn't want it, she wouldn't mind, but since she wanted it, she would never let the woman get away with it. "Gee, just because you choose it first doesn't mean you own it. It's in my hands now." "Well, if I say I choose all the clothes here, does that then mean you won't be able to buy any of them?" the lady said with disdain. "Wow, I didn't expect you're so rich. You even want them all." "Hey, have you heard what she just said? This lady said she want all the clothes here. I think the commission you'll get today will be higher than a year of commission you may get," Gu Ning said to a saleswoman. She deliberately twisted the truth. "Shut your mouth. I did not say that," the woman yelled at Gu Ning in anger. Though she was rich, this international designer brand was super expensive, and a single piece of clothing cost dozens of thousands of yuan. All of the clothes here in the shop would be worth at least millions. The woman absolutely couldn't afford it. The crowd all knew Gu Ning was twisting the truth. No one took her words seriously. "Really? Because if I choose it, I'm going to buy it." "And you?" Gu Ning said provocatively. "You," the woman was mad. She also understood Gu Ning was challenging her on purpose, but she was still irritated. "Sorry, madam. This young lady did choose this piece of clothing first. Would you please have a look at the other clothes?" the saleswoman apologized to the woman. Hearing that, the crowd immediately understood what had happened. Everyone disliked the woman's behavior. "Xiaoli, Mrs. Xiao is our frequent customer with a VIP silver card. She has the priority to choose first," another saleswoman who was with Mrs. Xiao interrupted. She even glared at the saleswoman who was with Gu Ning. Apparently, this was nothing to do with the so-called priority to choose first. The saleswoman was just snobbish. Xiao Li, however, ignored the warning. She argued, "Miss Wang, I disagree with you. The one who arrives first can choose first. Even a VIP customer can't grab the clothes from another customer." You, Miss Wang, was annoyed to be argued back. This Miss Wang was always snobbish and only served the rich people. Mrs. Xiao, meanwhile, was a frequent customer here. She apparently wanted to have a friendly relationship with Mrs. Xiao. This was a shop of an international designer brand. The cheapest item cost dozens of thousands of yuan. Besides, a saleswoman could have 2% commission on the sales. Every time Mrs. Xiao was here, she would spend at least 80,000 yuan. The commission would be several thousand yuan. The onlookers all agreed with Xiao Li. They also felt dissatisfied. Exactly, even a VIP customer can't grab the clothes from another customer. It's unfair. It's not unfair. It's snobbish. Why don't you just sell the clothes only to the VIP customers? Anyone who wants to buy clothing here must have a VIP card first. True. Those customers who surrounded them all criticized Miss Wang, which made her feel embarrassed, but she didn't dare to retort. Mrs. Xiao, instead, felt irritated. So what? I have enough money. I'll buy whatever I want. It's none of your business. You can buy whatever you want, but you can't grab things from others, someone argued. Exactly. This lady doesn't have manners at all, someone said. You. Do you know who I am? How dare you to say that? I am the wife of the chairman of Zhoufu Jewelry. Mrs. Xiao was annoyed. She spoke loudly about her identity. Hearing that, everyone shut their mouths at once. They obviously all knew Zhoufu Jewelry, which had at least 100 million yuan in assets. And they just had millions in assets. No one dared to compete with Zhoufu Jewelry. Gu Ning was a little surprised. She didn't expect this woman was Xiao Ping's wife. Xiao Ping and Zhou Xinghong didn't get along with each other. Gu Ning therefore disliked Xiao Ping's family as well. Those onlookers were afraid of the Xiao family, but Gu Ning wasn't. She directly criticized, "Do you think you can do whatever you want as the wife of the chairman of Zhoufu Jewelry? You." Mrs. Xiao didn't expect Gu Ning wasn't afraid of the Xiao family at all. But Mrs. Xiao was too proud. In City F, there were many more families who were richer than them. At that moment, the store manager came over. What happened? Before anyone else, Gu Ning opened her mouth with slight unkindness. Nice to meet you, manager. Let me ask you a question first. Is it true that your VIP customer can directly grab the clothing from another normal customer as long as she wants to? How is this possible? The one who arrives first chooses first. A VIP customer can only get a discount, the store manager immediately explained. EAD new chapter S on no/v/e/ln.com. Before long, he soon realized what had happened. He then turned to Miss Wang Yunyun. What happened? Since there was only one VIP customer, Mrs. Xiao, in the shop, and the saleswoman who was with Mrs. Xiao was Wang Yunyun, the manager naturally turned to her first. Wang Yunyun had no idea the thing would end up like that. She hated Gu Ning so much, but did not dare to show it in front of the manager. Besides, this was the first time such a thing had happened. She did not know how to explain. Let me explain, please. Xiao Li recommended a piece of clothing to me, and I liked it. I wanted to take a closer look, but unexpectedly, Mrs. Xiao grabbed it from me. I asked her to give it back to me, but she refused. Meanwhile, Wang Yunyun said that Mrs. Xiao was a VIP customer and had priority to choose first, Gu Ning said. The manager changed his face immediately. He didn't doubt Gu Ning's explanation, and bashed Wang Yunyun. Wang Yunyun, what's wrong with you? You've worked here for a long time. How could you know nothing about the rules? The manager knew Wang Yunyun was snobbish, but she didn't normally cause any trouble. Thus the manager did nothing. However, the manager couldn't accept that she ruined the reputation of the shop this time. Wang Yunyun suddenly didn't know what to say. She knew she had behaved in a wrong way, but everything she had done was merely for more commission. Enough, you're fired. You don't need to come to work tomorrow. The manager didn't want to waste time with Wang Yunyun. Since she had damaged the reputation of this shop, the manager had to lay her off. What? Hearing that, Wang Yunyun was shocked. She honestly didn't know the result would be that bad. The most up-to-date NVELs are published on n0velgen.co/m. Now, she sincerely felt scared. If she was fired, she couldn't find a better job. She almost begged, "Manager, please give me another chance. I promise this won't happen again. Wang Yunyun, it's written in the contract. Anyone who damages the reputation of this shop will be fired." "I'm sorry. My hands are tied," the manager said. The manager then ignored Wang Yunyun, turning to Mrs. Xiao. He explained politely, "Mrs. Xiao, we have our rules here. The one who arrives first chooses first. If you like this piece of clothing, I'm afraid you need to wait until this miss doesn't want it, so please return this piece of clothing to this miss." "Thank you so much." Mrs. Xiao of course was unhappy to do that, not only because of the piece of clothing, but also because she had been humiliated. However, since the manager was here, she didn't want to argue with him. She was going to buy more clothes from this shop in the future. Although the brand had many stores in City G, this store was unique with many more designs. "I don't want it at all." "Who cares?" Mrs. Xiao said with unhappiness. She directly threw the piece of clothing back at Gu Ning, then turned around and left. She had been greatly humiliated before everyone and had no reason to stay here any longer. Gu Ning took the piece of clothing right away. She really liked this one. "I'll take this, and more. Please give me one of that in size L. All of them are for women around 40. Gu Ning handed the clothing to the saleswoman. Hearing that, the crowd was all surprised. This girl didn't look at the price tag at all. She must be very rich. The more a customer bought, the more commission a saleswoman could get. Xiaoli was obviously happy to see that. She immediately recommended more to Gu Ning, following Gu Ning's demands. Finally, Gu Ning chose 2 sweaters, 2 pairs of pants and 2 long wool coats for Gu Man and Gu Qing. She of course wouldn't forget her uncle Jiang Su and her cousin Jiang Xinyue. She bought a black Armani suit, a sweater and a pair of pants for Jiang Su. As for Jiang Xinyue, she was still at a young age and didn't need to wear clothing from a designer brand. Gu Ning herself didn't want to do that either, so she went to another shop of a normal brand and bought some dresses for Jiang Xinyue and herself. After buying the clothes, Gu Ning went to buy a series of skincare products for both Gu Man and Gu Qing. Then the question came to Gu Ning. What should she buy for Chu Pei Han and others? Gifts were about good intentions, not the price. Moreover, except for Yu Mixi, the rest were all rich kids. It wasn't a wise choice to buy expensive gifts for them. After a while, Gu Ning decided to buy Chu Pei Han and Yu Mixi each a Lancome perfume, which was worth more than 1,000 yuan. Yu Mixi lacked of a good phone, so Gu Ning bought a phone for her. To not burden her friend, Gu Ning didn't buy an expensive one, but only spent 2,000 yuan on a new phone. Since she was in a phone shop, Gu Ning bought new phones for Gu Man and the family of Gu Qing as well. As for Hao Ran and the boys, she bought 4 Armani wallets for them, which cost around 1,000 yuan each. Gu Ning felt satisfied at the end. When her company opened, she planned to prepare some jewelry made of jade for them then. When she received Zhou Xinghong's call, Gu Ning had almost finished her shopping. Before she left, she went to the ladies' room putting all the gifts into her telepathic eye space. It would be a lot if she carried them by hand. Their appointed place was a restaurant beside the commercial building. Gu Ning walked straight to the restaurant after she left the commercial building. She stepped into the elevator. When the door was almost closed, a man suddenly dashed in and knocked into Gu Ning by accident. "Oh, sorry, I'm in a hurry," the man apologized. "It's nothing," Gu Ning said. But she felt something was strange, because when the man had hit her, she had felt there was a tough object around the man's waist. It felt like metal, and the shape was quite familiar to Gu Ning. All of a sudden, an idea dawned on Gu Ning. Was it a gun? Thinking of that, Gu Ning immediately used her jade eyes. It really was a gun. At the same time, Gu Ning used her jade eyes to scan the other 4 men around her. She felt nervous at once. These 5 men all carried a gun with them around their waist. A man with a gun normally was from the police or the army. Otherwise, they would be gangsters or criminals. Gu Ning could sense the air of violence from these men. They seemed more like gangsters or criminals. Gu Ning again used her jade eyes to look at the box held in a man's hand. There were bags of white powder inside. Although Gu Ning had never tried the white power herself, she immediately realized what it was according to her rich experience. She secretly inhaled deeply. These men must be here to trade. It was none of her business, so Gu Ning didn't plan to get involved. The elevator stopped at the 5th floor. Gu Ning left the elevator. Coincidentally, the 5 men all left at the 5th floor too. Gu Ning walked to the appointed private room. To her surprise, her private room was exactly next to the private room of those men. "Boss, here you are. Please have a seat." The minute Gu Ning appeared, Zhou Xinghong immediately greeted her. He pulled out the chair for her too. "Boss, I didn't know what your favorites are, so I didn't order yet. Now please order the food." Zhou Xinghong handed the menu to Gu Ning, then rang the service bell. When a waiter opened the door, Gu Ning glimpsed as a group of men walked by. She unexpectedly found she was familiar with the front man's figure. However, when she looked over, they were gone. Gu Ning didn't know many men, and even less of them could leave an unforgettable impression on her. Thus she immediately knew who he was. The man must be the one who had given her the king's green. What a coincidence! He was here too. Gu Ning didn't bother to think further about it. She moved her sight back to the menu. She ordered 2 dishes, then gave the menu back to Zhou Xinghong. "Uncle Zhou, please help yourself and order something you like." Zhou Xinghong took the menu. He ordered 2 dishes as well, then handed the menu to the waiter. When the waiter left, Zhou Xinghong immediately took out a file paper bag, giving it to Gu Ning. "Boss, I've set up the contract. Please have a look. If there is anything you think is inappropriate, I can adjust it." "Great." Gu Ning took it. She opened the paper bag and started to read the document inside. With her powerful jade eyes, it was super easy for Gu Ning to read through the contract quickly, but in front of Zhou Xinghong, Gu Ning had to pretend. She deliberately spent more time on the papers to make it seem natural. The contract only had 2 pages, so although Gu Ning slowed down her reading pace on purpose, she still finished it in 2 minutes. The labor contract between Gu Ning and Zhou Xinghong said that Zhou Xinghong was the executive director of the Jade Beauty Jewelry Company. He had absolute right of discourse. The registered capital of the Jade Beauty Jewelry Company was 100 million yuan. In addition to the monthly salary, Zhou Xinghong also owned 20% of the shares of the Jade Beauty Jewelry Company. "Well, I think it's good," Gu Ning said. She signed her name in Party A, and then handed it to Zhou Xinghong. Zhou Xinghong also signed his name. Gu Ning couldn't help using her jade eyes to see into the private room next door. She saw those men that she saw in the elevator, and another group of men sat across a table. There were 2 black boxes on the table in front of the 2 groups. They were in a luxurious restaurant with great insulation, so she couldn't hear anything because they weren't speaking loudly. She could only see what they were doing. They opened the boxes. One of them was full of bags of white powder, while the other was filled with piles of bills and gold bars. Apparently, they were in the middle of a deal. Although Gu Ning knew they were doing something illegal, she knew she shouldn't get involved. Moreover, there were at least 10 men with guns. Gu Ning wasn't powerful enough to fight against them. Gu Ning brought her sight back, lifting the teacup to drink a sip. However, in the private room adjacent to the private room next door, there were 3 men. One of them was Leng Xiaoting. Leng Xiaoting was dressed in black clothes. He was tall and expressionless. He was wearing earphones, listening to the sound from the adjacent room, and was monitoring the conversation. Meanwhile, a young man walked over, talking to Leng Xiaoting. "Captain, except for us and the enemies, there are also people in another private room on this floor. It's room number 3, which is right next to our enemy's room. I've already informed the manager to get them to leave." "Great," Leng Xiaoting answered lightly and said nothing else. Because they didn't know their enemy's appointed place beforehand, they weren't well prepared in advance. They could only check the surrounding situation after the appointed place had been confirmed. Even the bug was secretly set by one of Leng Xiaoting's men who had disguised himself as a waiter. Knock, knock. Up to TED Chapters NN.com. At that moment, the door of Gu Ning's private room was knocked on and was then pushed open. Gu Ning though it was the waiter, but to her surprise, 2 men who were around 30 walked in. Both Gu Ning and Zhou Xinghong frowned a little. One of the men was full of regret, saying, "Nice to meet you, miss and sir. I'm the hotel manager. I'm so sorry to bother you for a special condition. The man with the hotel manager walked in front of Gu Ning. He took out a document and handed it to Gu Ning. He said, "Nice to meet you both. This is my certificate as a military officer. Our military is currently carrying out a task on this floor. For your safety, I hope you can immediately move to a private room upstairs." Sorry about that. Knowing that, Zhou Xinghong was completely shocked while Gu Ning was merely a little surprised. It must have something to do with the people in the next room. However, could the man be from the military? Well, the man did look like a military man. Sure. Gu Ning didn't want to be involved either. She answered, then left with Zhou Xinghong, following the hotel manager and the military officer. However, just as they left the room, the two men standing outside room number 4 immediately looked over. The hotel manager suddenly panicked. His face turned pale at once because he clearly knew that the suspect was right in that private room. Both Gu Ning and the officer knew that something bad might happen. The reaction of the hotel manager was likely to attract the attention of those men. The officer immediately took a step forward and blocked the hotel manager. He gave the manager a warning look. However, the two people who were outside had already seen the manager's face. They sensed something must be wrong right away. They called out, "Wait." The hotel manager trembled, but because of the officer's warning look, he forced himself to calm down and immediately put on a formulaic smile. "Nice to meet you, sir. What can I do for you?" he asked the person who called him. The two men exchanged a knowing look, then walked towards them. Both Gu Ning and the officer were alert. They knew things could go wrong. But they were afraid to raise suspicion, so they decided to temporarily stand still. The two men walked over, then immediately took out guns aiming at them. "Get in," they snapped quietly. The hotel manager and Zhou Xinghong's faces immediately turned pale. They were trembling from the terror. Gu Ning and the military officer stayed calm instead, but again to not raise suspicion, they cooperated well and showed fear on their faces. They were all forced back into the private room. Room number 5 was where Ling Xiaoting stayed. He had set cameras outside, so he was able to see what was going on. "Captain, what should we do?" "They're so sensitive," a man said worriedly. "Be patient," Ling Xiaoting said. Ling Xiaoting didn't miss the relatively smaller figure among them. He was a little upset and uneasy. It seemed that he was concerned about her safety. "In room number 3. You just saw us. Why did you look so scared?" a suspect asked the hotel manager. He recognized the hotel manager, so he was particularly sensitive. Nothing," the hotel manager denied. He tried to stay calm, but failed. The two men definitely didn't believe him. "Tell them we have a problem here," one of the men said to the other. The other man then turned to walk out. Gu Ning looked at the man's gun. He hadn't cocked it yet. If Gu Ning went to grab his gun, there was no chance for the man to shoot. In other words, it was safe for Gu Ning to do so. Gu Ning gave the military officer a knowing look. The latter immediately understood. The military officer was amazed too. This young girl wasn't afraid at all. She even wanted to act first. To be honest, the military officer didn't trust Gu Ning's ability. He was a little hesitant, but when he saw Gu Ning's undeniable look, he immediately felt more confident. Therefore, he nodded slightly as affirmation. The girl dared to grab the gun directly from a man, which showed she had both courage and ability. Gu Ning then started to act. She came to the man like lightning and grabbed his hand. With a snap sound, the man's hand was broken. Meanwhile, the military officer pulled his gun out, shooting at the other man. Before the man could make a sound, Gu Ning immediately stuffed his mouth with tissues. She then raised her hand and slashed it toward his neck. The man immediately lost consciousness. Because the officer's gun was equipped with a silencer, it did not make any sound. He accurately shot the other man in the head. The man then silently fell onto the ground. It all happened too fast to be noticed. The two men still didn't realize what had happened before they were both killed. Both the hotel manager and Zhou Xinghong rounded their eyes in shock. They felt like they were in a dream. The military officer instead was also surprised by Gu Ning. He didn't expect this young girl could be that powerful. She was even as good and swift as he was. He had been in the army for at least 10 years as a senior special commander and had been through at least 10 years of devil training. What kind of training had this girl been through? The military officer thought to himself. Although he wondered, he didn't ask. It was none of his business after all. Besides, he had a bigger fish to fry now. You all must leave now, the military officer said. It's too late, Gu Ning said. She saw someone going out from the private room next door. As soon as the man came out, he would find the bodies. At that moment, Gu Ning ran out before she could say another word. The rest of the people in the room were all surprised. They had no idea what she was going to do. Zhou Xinghong wanted to have a look because he was worried about Gu Ning's safety. However, he was stopped by the military officer. Instead, the military officer followed her. Ling Xiaoting, on the other side, noticed Gu Ning was coming out. Seeing Gu Ning is out, they knew the people in private room number 3 were fine now, but why was Gu Ning rushing out? Amid all the confusion, Gu Ning dashed to the door of private room number 4. At the same time, the door was pushed open and a man walked out. Before the man noticed Gu Ning coming, Gu Ning hit him with great force. The man lost consciousness at short notice and fell onto the ground. Gu Ning then grabbed his gun. Watching that, Ling Xiaoting and his people who were staring at the screen, as well as the military officer who followed Gu Ning out, were all shocked. They now understood why Gu Ning said that it was too late. But how could she know that there was a man coming out? Knowing that Gu Ning was safe, Ling Xiaoting was relieved. Now it was time for them to act. 3 of them walked out immediately. Gu Ning's gaze met Ling Xiaoting's eyes coincidentally. Seeing his handsome cold face, Gu Ning's heart skipped a beat. But she knew it wasn't the appropriate time to appreciate the handsome man. Get back to the private room, Ling Xiaoting said to Gu Ning. I can protect myself, Gu Ning replied. She wouldn't go back. Ling Xiaoting frowned a little. He was apparently dissatisfied, but he didn't say anything more. He was confident that as long as he was here, he could protect the young girl. Immediately after that, Ling Xiaoting and his people ran into private room number 4. A round of gunshots followed. Once the gunshots sounded, the whole building was lost in terror. People ran away, trying to hide. The building even shook a little. Zhou Xinghong and the hotel manager were scared and hid themselves directly under the table. Zhou Xinghong was very worried about Gu Ning, but he did not dare to go out. Moreover, he didn't go out because of Gu Ning's warning. Before long, the gunshots stopped. Meanwhile, the sirens also sounded downstairs, but the police were notified in advance and cleaned up the scene. Although Gu Ning didn't walk into the room, she knew clearly what was happening inside because she used her jade eyes. Ling Xiaoting only had 3 men with him, while the other party had 7 or 8 men. But for the suspect, the appearance of Ling Xiaoting and his men was so unexpected. Thus when the other party reacted, it was already too late and they were all killed. And Ling Xiaoting as well his men were all safe. They were amazingly powerful. Although the mission was completed, Ling Xiaoting and his men didn't leave right away. They were waiting for the police so that they could hand over. Gu Ning turned around to go into her private room. She told Zhou Xinghong and the hotel manager it was all right now. Boss, are you all right? Zhou Xinghong heard Gu Ning's voice. He immediately moved out from beneath the table, along with the hotel manager. Seeing that, Gu Ning felt like laughing, but she had no intention to make fun of them. It had been a gun war, and it was totally understandable that people got scared. I'm fine, Gu Ning replied. Manager, I suppose you need to close the restaurant for a while because of what has just happened. We won't bother you here, Gu Ning said. Sure. I'm so sorry about that, miss. Oh, thank you so much for rescuing me. The manager didn't forget that Gu Ning had saved his life. I was saving myself too, Gu Ning said. She wasn't being modest, she simply told the truth. Then, Gu Ning together with Zhou Xinghong, who hadn't recovered from the shock yet, went outside. Please wait. Before they went far away, Ling Xiaoting stopped them. Sir, what's up? Gu Ning turned around. She looked at Ling Xiaoting walking to her with her big beautiful eyes. Her voice sounded charming. All the men were softened. Ling Xiaoting's heart skipped a beat as well. This girl is so adorable. But the feeling quickly went away. Most up-to-date novels are published on n0velgen.co/m. Ling Xiaoting came to Gu Ning, reaching out his hand. Non-military or police personnel are not allowed to hold guns privately. Once found, it must be handled as illegal behavior. Everyone was shocked. What? This young girl had a gun? They had noticed that Gu Ning had grabbed the suspect's gun, but didn't hand it over. However, Gu Ning left a good impression on them given she had been of great help, so they didn't think further about it. They believed the young girl was simply curious about a gun. Gu Ning was reluctant to do it at first, but then she resignedly took a gun out of her backpack, throwing it back to Ling, shouting, "Can't hide it from you, ha," she complained. Gu Ning didn't have chance to put the gun into the room of her telepathic eyes, so if he wanted to search her body for it, she couldn't hide it. Thus she had to give it to him. "Uncle Zhou, let's go," Gu Ning called Zhou Xinghong, who was distracted. Zhou Xinghong immediately followed her. When Gu Ning disappeared at the end of the passage, Ling Xiaoting found the suspect, who was lying on the ground in private room number 3. He sensed something wasn't right. He walked over and searched the suspect's body. Nothing. Indeed, Gu Ning carried another gun with her, which belongs to that suspect. If Gu Ning hadn't had another gun with her, she wouldn't have been willing to give the first gun to Ling Xiaoting. Ling Xiaoting was annoyed, but not upset. It seemed that he trusted her and believed that she wouldn't do anything harmful, so he didn't chase her, but instead focused on what had just happened in the hotel. After all, he knew she was a student from the number 3 high school in City F. He could always find her later. "Boss, you're so awesome." When they left the hotel, Zhou Xinghong finally recovered from the shock. He now admired Gu Ning more than ever. Gu Ning was merely an 18-year-old girl. "If I couldn't do anything, I wouldn't dare to walk around freely," Gu Ning said. Right, Zhou Xinghong agreed with Gu Ning. He had always believed that Gu Ning wasn't just an ordinary girl with excellent accuracy on stone gambling. However, today he had been amazed again. "Oh, boss, what do you want to eat?" "We haven't eaten yet," Zhou Xinghong asked. Gu Ning though for a while, then said, "Let's go have hot pot." "Sure," Zhou Xinghong answered. They went to a food center afterwards. After the meal, it was already 12:30 p.m. Gu Ning's flight would take off at 2 p.m., so she needed to leave for the airport. Before she left, Gu Ning told Zhou Xinghong to buy a car for convenience. He was allowed to choose a car which was worth within 1,000,000 yuan. After that, Gu Ning left. On her way to the airport, Gu Ning thought it would be faster to buy a house if she knew someone who was powerful. Among the people Gu Ning knew in City F, only in Qian and Qin Yifan were reliable. Gu Ning's first choice was Qin Yifan. She didn't know In Qian's background and wasn't sure whether In Qian had the ability to help her. Thus, Gu Ning called Qin Yifan. At the same time, Qin Yifan was sitting in a cafe with Li Zhenyu. Qin Yifan was a mature and stable man, but once it involved Gu Ning, Qin Yifan would suddenly be lively. When Gu Ning's call came in, Qin Yifan was delighted with a smile at the corners of his lips. "Gu Ning, what's up?" He even sounded sweet. Li Zhenyu witnessed all his reactions and felt uneasy. Did Qin Yifan like Gu Ning that much? Although he hated Gu Ning, he had to admit Gu Ning wasn't ordinary. She had good appearance and unbearable luck, as well as talent on stone gambling. Moreover, Li Jinjin had come home in shock yesterday. He then knew Li Jinjin had hired a bunch of gangsters to teach Gu Ning a lesson. However, unexpectedly, Gu Ning had been totally fine. She even had called and threatened Li Jinjin with Lu's phone. At first Li Zhenyu thought Lu must have been bought by Gu Ning with money. Although he had connection with Lu, they weren't close. Besides, Lu was a gangster who would do anything for money. It was possible that he had betrayed Li Jinjin for money. But he had checked it himself this morning. Lu and his men had been injured by Gu Ning, and all of them were in the hospital now. Li Zhenyu had totally been shocked. It was beyond his imagination that a teenage girl could be so powerful and difficult to deal with, but he was still confused about Gu Ning's background. If she was from a common family, he wouldn't care about her at all, but if she was from a powerful rich family, he would have to have a second thought for the good of his family. New chapters will be fully updated at novl/bin.com. Li Zhenyu decided to investigate Gu Ning first. Luckily, even though Gu Ning knew Li Jinjin was behind those gangsters, she had no proof, so Li Zhenyu didn't need to worry that Gu Ning would sue his sister. "Well, I want to buy 2 well-decorated houses in Fenghua Luxury Mansion. Do you know anyone who can get it done as soon as possible?" Gu Ning asked. Qin Yifan happily replied, "You've called the right person. I have a friend who is actually the sales manager of Fenghua Luxury Mansion. I'll call him later to help you pick the best location and give you the biggest discount." Qin Yifan knew Gu Ning had over 100 million yuan of wealth, so he didn't feel surprised when she said she was going to buy houses in Fenghua Luxury Mansion. Besides, he felt honored that Gu Ning turned to him for help. "Great, thank you so much." Gu Ning accepted Qin Yifan's kindness. She didn't care about a discount actually, but she wouldn't reject it either. "You're welcome. I'll send his number to you once it's done," Qin Yifan said. "Thanks," Gu Ning said. When she was about to hang up, another thing dawned on her. "Oh, I almost forget. I have an emerald with me now, and I want to make some jewelry for my family with it. I plan to give it to Itsue Jade Store to help me with that when you're back in City F." "What? You've cut out more jade? What is its type?" Qin Yifan was so excited to hear about the jade that he almost jumped up from his seat. No one could blame him. Gu Ning had already cut out 2 high-level jade yesterday, which was amazing. But she even cut out more later. She wanted to make jewelry for her family with it, so it must be a high-level jade. "You'll find out when you're back. Of course it isn't ordinary." Gu Ning deliberately kept it a secret. But for Qin Yifan, this was simply a bucket of cold water splashing down on him, and his excitement was immediately ruined. Instead, he was super curious now. He complained, "How can you do that to me? It's torture. I can't wait to see what type it is. I'll be back tomorrow morning. You better mind your own ongoing business first." "All right, I'm almost at the airport, bye-bye," Gu Ning said. "Take care then." Qin Yifan knew that Gu Ning was going back today, so he wasn't surprised that she was in the airport now. After Qin Yifan hung up, Li Zhenyu asked him with a meaningful look, "Your attitude towards the girl Gu Ning is different. Tell me the truth. Do you like her?" Qin Yifan was struck dumb. He did appreciate Gu Ning, but he didn't know whether he liked Gu Ning himself. He just felt happy and relaxed whenever he was with her. "I have no idea." Qin Yifan gave a vague answer because he truly didn't know. However, his vague answer showed that he might actually like her. Although Li Zhenyu was disappointed to hear that, he said nothing. He clearly knew that Qin Yifan treated Li Zhenjin as his younger sister. He wasn't willing to marry her, but Li Zhenyu still had hope. Qin Yifan's parents liked Li Zhenjin. They all hoped for Qin Yifan to marry Li Zhenjin, but they would also respect Qin Yifan's choice. Therefore, the Li family couldn't urge Qin Yifan to marry Li Zhenjin for the good of their relationship. Qin Yifan then immediately called his friend to help Gu Ning. At the same time, what had happened in the restaurant was aired on TV. People all felt surprised. However, the news reports didn't mention Gu Ning. Although Gu Ning had helped a lot in the gun war, Lin Shaoting was afraid that she would be revenged by other gangsters, so he ordered them to not mention her name. At 3:15 p.m., the plane landed at the airport of City F. Gu Ning checked her phone and saw that she received a message from Qin Yifan. Qin Yifan told her that he had settled everything. His friend's name and number were attached to the message. The man was called Wei Jirue. Gu Ning sent a message back to thank him. When Gu Ning walked out of the airport, she called Gu Man. She told her mother she was back, but she planned to take a look at the houses before going back to the hospital. Gu Ning took a taxi heading straight to Fenghua Luxury Mansion. On her way, she called Wei Jirue to politely tell him she was coming and her intention. Wei Jirue of course wouldn't reject such a profitable deal. Besides, Gu Ning was introduced by his good friend, so Wei Jirue naturally showed his passion. "Nice to meet you. May I ask, are you Miss Gu?" Once Gu Ning walked into the sales apartment, a man who was around 30 years old came to greet her. Wei Jirue already knew that Gu Ning was a beautiful 18-year-old girl, and there wasn't any other young girls around. He was almost 100% sure that he recognized the right person when Gu Ning stepped in. Although he knew the buyer was a young girl, he was still greatly surprised when he met Gu Ning in person. The girl was so young and even wanted to buy 2 houses. However, since she was introduced by Qin Yifan, she must be super rich. Anyway, Wei Jirue would be polite as long as a customer walked in, no matter if he or she was rich or not. That was the basic qualification of a worker in the service industry. "I am Gu Ning." "You must be Mr. Wei." Gu Ning answered. Yes, I'm Wei Jirue. Nice to meet you, Miss Gu. Welcome to Fanghuo Luxury Mansion, Wei Jirue said to Gu Ning. Miss Gu, Yifan told me about your requests. However, I think it's better to introduce the environment of Fanghuo Luxury Mansion to you first. Please follow me. Wei Jirue guided Gu Ning to the exhibition hall and said, Fanghuo Luxury Mansion is the most high-end residential area in City F. The location is very good. It's close to the downtown, but it's quiet. There is a medium-sized shopping mall across the road from Fanghuo Luxury Mansion. There are also food supermarkets, clothing, furniture and so forth inside. There are also many banks around, so it's very convenient to live here. The facilities, preservation and property service of Fanghuo Luxury Mansion are all of high quality. Fanghuo Luxury Mansion is planned in the form of a district within a central district. Each district forms a community with between 4 and 8 buildings with independent gates. The residents need a card to get in and an outsider needs to get the guidance or permission of a resident here. Only after the security guard is informed can the outsider come in. Of course, it is possible that someone could secretly follow a resident and get in, but if anyone directly affects you, you can immediately call the security room. The security guard will take him or her out as fast as possible. There are small squares, greenery, swimming pools, leisure bars, gyms and small food supermarkets inside as well. Miss Gu, if you want well-decorated houses, the choices of location and floor are limited because we only have 3 floors with well-decorated houses in each building. The floors of each building are different. There are 6 households on each floor, 2 with 4 bedrooms, 2 with 3 bedrooms and 2 with 2 bedrooms. If you want a 3-bedroom house, there are 2 best choices available. One is in the E zone, and the other is in the G zone. Each zone is a community of 4 or 5 buildings. If you come in from the gate and walk at a general speed, it only takes 10 to 20 minutes to arrive. We do however have sightseeing cars around here. If you take the car, it only takes 3 minutes. Wei Jirue then pointed out the location for Gu Ning. The houses were in the front half of the district, and it was indeed a good position. There are 5 buildings in E zone, and 3 3-bedroom houses in building E3. However, they aren't on the same floor. Each house is 120 square meters big. There are also 4 buildings in G zone with 3 3-bedroom houses in building G2. 2 of them are on the 9th floor and the size is relatively larger. It is 160 square meters big with an indoor garden, 3 rooms and 1 living room, 1 study, 1 kitchen and 3 bathrooms. There is a large balcony in the living room. Here is a model of the apartment. Please have a look. Saying that, Wei Jirue guided Gu Ning to the model's area. Before Gu Ning saw the size of the houses, she had already planned to buy one that was 160 square meters. Although she felt it was a little large for her and her mother alone, fortunately, there were 2 houses on the same floor. It will be very lively if the family of Gu Qing also moved in. Gu Ning was very satisfied with the houses that were 160 square meters, but before she decided she wanted to have a look at its decoration first. Although Fanghuo Luxury Mansion was a high-end district, and its decoration was also of high quality, it was better to have a look in person first. They took the sightseeing car and arrived within 3 minutes. It could be faster if no one got on and off on the way. They then took the elevator to the 9th floor. Wei Jirue opened the door for Gu Ning. Once they walked in, an indoor garden came into view. There was a shoe cabinet beside the door. A tea table and fish tanks were in the garden. There was however no fish in the fish tank because the house wasn't occupied. In the living room, there was a chandelier, sofa, coffee table, carpet, TV cabinet and a TV. The TV was 50 inches large. In the dining room, there was a dining table and chairs. In the kitchen, there was a refrigerator, oven, gas stove, range hood, pots and pans. All of them had been packed. They were all brand new. The only things missing were rice, oil, salt and vinegar. There was also a balcony with a fully automatic washing machine in the kitchen. In the study, there were bookcases, a desk, a small sofa with 3 seats and a small coffee table. In the master bedroom, there was a bathroom, cloakroom, bed, wardrobe and a dressing table. There were also a toilet, bed, wardrobe, a desk and a chair in the 2nd bedroom. In the 3rd bedroom, there were a bed, wardrobe, a desk and a chair, but there wasn't a bathroom. The house had been cleaned often, so it was clean and bright, without dust. However, if they wanted to move in, it had to be cleaned once more. Miss Gu, rest assured. You are a friend of Yifun's, so I would never lie to you. The decoration here is absolutely high standard, and the quality is excellent too. All the furniture has certificates, invoices, and warranty cards. You don't need to worry at all, Wei Jirue said with confidence. Actually, Gu Ning knew they were of good quality simply by looking at it and touching it. They went to the second house later. It was the same. Gu Ning then decided to buy those two houses. Although Wei Jirue knew it was highly possible that Gu Ning would buy the houses, he was still thrilled to hear the affirmative answer. Although Wei Jirue and Qin Yifan were friends, he wasn't from a rich family. He earned everything by working hard. Once he sold a house, he could earn a commission. How could he not be happy? Wei Jirue became the sales manager of Fenghua Luxury Mansion, which was a big real estate company, at a young age. He was a very capable man. The most up-to-date NVELs are published on n0velgen.co/m. Miss Gu, do you want to pay by full payment or installments? Wei Jirue asked. Full payment, Gu Ning answered. Wei Jirue was shocked again. Full payment? Two 160 square meter, big well-decorated houses in the front position cost around 13 million yuan. This girl must be super rich. To be honest, although Fenghua Luxury Mansion was a high-end residential area and most of the people who lived here were rich, many of them had paid by installments. There were 2,000 households in Fenghua Luxury Mansion currently, but only dozens of them had paid by full payment. Even those who had dozens of millions of yuan of wealth had paid by installments. The salespeople could extract the commission from the interest, and the total commission was higher than that of a full payment. But no one knew how long they could keep their job. Therefore, it was better to have a total commission at once. The owners of those two houses won't be the same person. I only brought a copy of one of their ID cards with me, so I'll buy one first, and pay the deposit for the other. I'll pay the full amount tomorrow, Gu Ning said. No problem, Wei Jirue answered. He then helped Gu Ning with the legal procedure. Gu Ning had already prepared a copy of Gu Man's ID card. She only wrote Gu Man's name on the property ownership certificate. Because the first house was paid by one-time payment, only the copy of an ID card was needed. The second one was a little troublesome. Since it was a house bought after marriage, it was necessary to have a household register, an ID card and a marriage certificate. Gu Ning would not only write Gu Qing's name on the property ownership certificate because of their intimate relation. She also knew her uncle Jiang Su was a good man, who treated Gu Qing and Jiang Xinyue very well. Thus, Gu Ning didn't regard Jiang Su as an outsider. Miss Gu, both of your well-decorated houses are 165 square meters big. The total price is 13.6 million yuan. After the biggest discount I can give you, it is 12.92 million yuan in total, Wei Jirue said. Thanks a lot, Gu Ning thanked him with sincerity. Gu Ning knew the man had done his best. And she did appreciate what the man had done for her. Besides, Wei Jirue probably could only gain 100,000 yuan from that deal. The total amount of a house is 6.45 million yuan, and the deposit for the other one is 100,000 yuan. Thus Miss Gu, you need to pay 6.55 million yuan now, Wei Jirue said. When Wei Jirue guided Gu Ning to the counter, the cashier was shocked. What? Full payment? The buyer must be super rich. Before long, Wei Jirue finished all the legal documents. Gu Ning already had the key of the house which she and Gu Man would move into today. Gu Man had actually already recovered and was ready to leave the hospital. Before Gu Ning left, she left a key with Wei Jirue. She asked him to help her find an hourly worker. She wanted the house to be cleaned once more before she moved in. It could of course be handled easily by Wei Jirue. Once Gu Ning was gone, the news that Wei Jirue had sold a house paid by full payment exploded in the entire sales hall. They all asked Wei Jirue how he did it. Wei Jirue didn't keep it a secret. He told his colleagues the buyer was a friend of his friend. He then told them the buyer planned to buy 2 houses by full payment today, but she didn't have all the documents with her, so she paid the deposit first. She would come back tomorrow. Everyone was shocked again. That girl must be super rich. It was already 5:30 p.m. when Gu Ning left. She immediately called Gu Man to invite the family of Gu Qing. She intended to have lunch with all of them to celebrate. Coincidentally, the family of Gu Qing was in the hospital with Gu Man today. Therefore, Gu Ning decided to go directly to the hospital. She planned to visit Gu Man first, then buy some daily necessities on the way back. She took a taxi to the hospital. Fanghua Luxury Mansion wasn't far away from the hospital. It only took a dozen minutes to arrive at the hospital if there was no traffic jam, but it was rush hour now, so it took Gu Ning almost half an hour. When she arrived at the hospital, she called In Qian. She told In Qian her mother was about to leave, and she also wanted to invite In Qian for a meal once she was free. Gu Ning also wanted to pay In Qian back for the admission fee. In Qian refused to take Gu Ning's money. It wasn't much to her. Besides, Gu Ning had saved her life, which was much more priceless. But she accepted having a meal with Gu Ning. She honestly wanted to make friends with Gu Ning. Gu Ning didn't argue with In Qian on the phone. She was going to pay her back anyway. Gu Ning finished the discharge procedure before she went upstairs. In the patient room, Gu Ning greeted the family of Gu Qing one by one. Gu Ning was happy to see that her mother had gained some weight and was more energetic than before. Gu Man had told Gu Qing and Jiangsu that Gu Ning had been out to find a house. Ning, have you found a house? Gu Qing asked Gu Ning when she came in. If Gu Ning failed to find a house, Gu Qing was determined to let them stay with her family so that they would have more time to find a place to live in later. I've found it, Gu Ning answered. Really? That's good. Where is the house? Is it safe? How much does it cost a month? Gu Qing asked. Gu Ning felt contented receiving the kindness and care from Gu Qing. She smiled with warmth. It's around the Yui Road. It's safe and the price is acceptable. Gu Ning didn't tell them details. It wasn't the appropriate time. Knowing that Gu Ning was going to buy instead of rent a house, Gu Man was surprised. Yui Road was close to the downtown with more blocks than Fanghua Luxury Mansion. Gu Man didn't think of Fanghua Luxury Mansion, of course, but the rest of the houses there weren't cheap either. A house would cost at least 2 million yuan. Didn't Ning Ning still plan to allot some money to investment? Gu Man always believed that Gu Ning would buy a house in a remote area at the price of 1 million yuan at the most. Gu Ning gave her mother a comforting glance. She didn't want to explain everything to them now. Although Gu Man was surprised, she was also happy to see that Gu Ning could make decisions on her own. Gu Ning then added, I've already finished the discharge documents. Now let's pack up and go home. Let's go celebrate. Oh, Gu Man can leave now? That's very good. We must celebrate. Everyone was delighted to know that Gu Ning had found a house, and that Gu Man was ready to leave the hospital. Gu Qing thought that Gu Ning and Gu Man were probably on a tight budget now, after they had paid the admission and the VIP patient room fee. Thus she invited them on her own initiative. This meal is on me. No one is going to compete with me for that. No. This meal has to be on me. Now, you all need to be mentally prepared, because I have some very important news to tell you later, Gu Ning said seriously. What news? Gu Qing and Jiangsu were a little worried to see Gu Ning wearing a serious face. However, although Gu Ning put on a serious face, nothing was actually wrong. Thus Gu Qing and Jiangsu were slightly relaxed. Only Gu Man knew what was going on, but if Gu Man had known that Gu Ning had bought 2 houses in the most expensive area in City F, she would have been completely shocked. As for Jiang Xinyue, she was curious, but didn't think further. Let's go home now. I'll tell you all later, Gu Ning urged. Since Gu Ning didn't want to tell them now, they all closed their mouths and started to pack up. Ning, who sent those to you? They're too many, and must be expensive. Gu Qing didn't discover those gifts that Gu Ning had received till now. Some are from my schoolmates, some are from a doctor who is my friend in this hospital, Gu Ning answered. Schoolmates? They must be super rich. Gu Qing said with surprise. Gu Ning didn't say anything else. They went downstairs and Gu Ning called a taxi on the way out. Before they even left the hospital, the car was already waiting for them outside. When the car stopped across Fanghua Luxury Mansion, everyone was amazed by its luxurious buildings. They almost believed that it was where they were going to move in, but no one actually believed it. It was beyond their imagination that Gu Ning was able to buy or rent a house here. However, there were only tall buildings, shopping malls or hotels around except for those luxurious residential houses. Thinking of that, Gu Qing asked, Ning, are there any houses to rent here? Even Gu Man didn't understand why Gu Ning brought them here. We lack many daily necessities now, so let's go to the supermarket first, Gu Ning said. Hearing that, everyone understood immediately. Gu Qing said, "Oh, right. You just rented a new house. There must be nothing inside." Then, the group of them walked into the supermarket. They mainly bought cookers, ingredients and food, as well as some other daily necessities. Gu Ning went to buy 3 sheet sets herself. They couldn't buy everything they needed in such a short time, so they only bought everything they needed for today. Gu Man had already quit her job. Gu Ning planned to give her a credit card with a 1,000,000 yuan limit later, so that she could buy anything she wanted. Read the latest stories on novelbin.com. When they went to pay, the rest all waited outside while Gu Ning settled the bill. No one else knew how much they had spent. All of them then left the supermarket with large and small bags. Since only Gu Ning knew the direction, everyone followed her, but when they got to the gate of Fanghua Luxury Mansion, everyone stopped and rounded their eyes in shock. "Ning Ning, are you going to tell us your house is right in there?" Gu Qing couldn't believe her eyes. "Ning Ning, the house price here is so expensive, even Gu Man couldn't stay quiet now." She was confused. "Please, let's not talk outside. Let's get in first." "I promise I'll tell you everything when we're at home," Gu Ning said in an undeniable tone. The rest were all nervous following Gu Ning to walk inside afterwards. Even though they walked in, they still couldn't believe it was true. They got into a sightseeing car, and all were amazed by the scene. They never would have believed that they would have a chance to step in Fanghua Luxury Mansion in their entire lifetime. The car stopped at G Zone. They all got out and walked inside. On the way, the rest all had countless questions in mind, especially the family of Gu Qing. However, they knew Gu Ning wouldn't say anything till they were home. They went to the 9th floor by elevator. Gu Ning pulled out the key and opened the door of her house. It was number 901. Once the door opened, they all stepped inside. When they saw the spacious rooms and the elegant decoration inside, everyone was stunned again. They even didn't dare to walk inside, but stopped at the door. They had actually been to such a spacious and well-decorated house before. It was Gu Qingxiang's house. However, when they had gone to his place, they had felt very nervous and had no idea how to behave. If they had had another choice, they wouldn't have gone to Gu Qingxiang's place. Of course, Gu Qingxiang also disliked them. "Please feel at home. Don't be nervous at all. Come on in. I'll tell you everything." Gu Ning put down all the stuff. She pulled Gu Man and Gu Qing while walking to the living room. Gu Qing was still a little nervous, while Gu Man relaxed a lot, because she knew that her daughter had bought this house. Although she didn't know why Gu Ning would buy such an expensive house, she chose to believe in her daughter. Jiang Su and Jiang Xinyue followed slowly. "Please have a seat," Gu Ning said, but some of them still stood. It seemed like they were afraid to dirt the sofa. "Have a seat, please." Gu Man sat down calmly. They all sat down afterwards, but felt uneasy. "Aunt, uncle, do you still remember what I said last Sunday? If I become rich, I will definitely let you live a good life," Gu Ning asked. Hearing that, both Gu Qing and Jiang Su kept staring at Gu Ning. They didn't realize what had happened. Apparently, they remembered Gu Ning's words, but what did Gu Ning's words have to do with what was happening now? They couldn't believe that Gu Ning would become rich within such a short time. Therefore, Gu Ning told them what she had told Gu Man. The family of Gu Qing were all amazed by the story. She had rescued a man, gotten 10 million yuan, and even planned to run a business? "I've said it before. Once I'm rich, I will definitely let you all live a good life. Now it's time to fulfill my promise. I bought 2 houses of the same size actually. The other one is right across from this one. This one is for me and my mother. The opposite one is for your whole family. Since I didn't tell you in advance, I couldn't get all the required documents. Please bring your household register and marriage certificate here tomorrow. After we finish the procedure, you can move in directly. The house is well decorated as well. All you need to buy are daily necessities," Gu Ning said. A long while later. Am I in a dream?" Gu Qing asked. It was so hard to believe it. She immediately pinched Jiang Su's thigh with great force. Jiang Su shouted in pain. Gu Qing asked him, "Does it hurt? Try it yourself." Jiangsu said. He wouldn't have shouted if it didn't hurt. Gu Qing glared at Jiangsu. She absolutely wouldn't do that to herself. Ha ha, ha ha. Both Gu Ning and Gu Man couldn't help laughing out loud. It's real. Ningning said that she wanted to wait to tell you till she bought the house. So we all kept it a secret, Gu Man explained. But the houses here aren't cheap at all. It must cost a lot to buy one here. Gu Qing said, confused. They were poor and hadn't finished their education, but it didn't mean they knew nothing. New chapters will be fully updated at novl/bin.com. Actually, Gu Man was also confused about that. Gu Ning hurriedly explained, well, I'm going to open a jewelry business, so I went to City G this weekend to buy raw jade materials. However, the raw materials are all covered with stone layers. There are piles and piles of them. No one knows which one actually has jade inside. Thus it's generally a gamble. Whoever cuts jade out from the raw materials can sell it on site. It's super hard to get an emerald though. I don't know whether I was lucky or something. I bought 5 raw materials, and fortunately there were 3 high-level emeralds in them. I sold one which in the size of an apple, and earned more than 20 million yuan. I used that money to buy the houses. Besides, as for the other 2 emeralds, I'll leave one for Muka's company, while the other one will be used to make jewelry for all of you. Before they could recover from the last shock, they all were shocked once more by Gu Ning's words. What? More than 20 million yuan? This was the first time they had ever known it could be so easy to make money. After a long time, they finally recovered. Ningning, you're so bold to play stone gambling. Gu Man criticized Gu Ning gently. She was more worried about her daughter. She had heard of stone gambling. It was a highly risky business. One could either become super rich or poor overnight. It was too dangerous. Mom, don't worry. I know how to handle it. Gu Ning immediately comforted her mother. Well, Gu Man didn't know what to say. She still chose to believe in her daughter. Gu Ning had made a lot of money. The family of Gu Qing also felt happy for her, but she gave them such an expensive house, so they all felt a little awkward. Ningning, I know you're being kind, but the house is too expensive. Gu Qing opened her mouth. She wanted to reject it. Aunt, I know clearly how much you've helped me and my mother ever since I was a little girl. Please accept it. We're a family after all. I can't see you all live a poor life any longer, Gu Ning interrupted Gu Qing. Indeed. Please accept it. We only have each other now. We're family, Gu Man added. Everyone was upset suddenly. True. They only had each other now. The rest of the Gu family disliked them and kept a distance away from them. Great, great, Gu Qing answered at the end. She burst into tears with happiness. Mom, can we live in such a nice house from now on? Jiang Xinyue asked with anticipation in her eyes. It was understandable that everyone wanted a better life. Gu Qing and her husband felt a little guilty that they weren't able to provide a good life for their daughter. Yes. We'll live in such a nice house after tomorrow, Gu Qing answered with love in her eyes. Having the affirmative answer, Jiang Xinyue was so excited that she almost jumped up. Wow. It's so great. Seeing Jiang Xinyue being happy, Jiangsu and Gu Qing as her parents were also happy. All right, it's almost 8 p.m. I'm starving. Mom, Aunt, please cook dinner for us, Gu Ning said. Oh, it's almost 8. We need to cook now. Gu Qing immediately left the sofa and pulled Gu Man, running to the kitchen. Gu Ning wanted to discuss something with Jiangsu, so she didn't go to help. She also stopped Jiangsu, who wanted to help. Uncle, can we have a talk? Gu Ning asked. Sure, Jiangsu answered, but he asked Jiang Xinyue to go help. Uncle, since we're not poor any longer, I naturally don't want you to continue doing labor work for so little money. Of course, I know you can't stay unemployed. I also don't want to see that. In the past, we could only live a hard life, but now, we can live a better and better life. So, I want to ask you. Do you want to start a thriving business and improve our lives in the future? Or you simply want to run a small business? As long as you don't have to be hungry or cold, no matter what you want, I can fully support you financially, Gu Ning said. Jiangsu wasn't clever or cunning enough. He probably wasn't capable of running a business. However, he worked hard and was diligent. He also liked learning. As long as he was determined, Gu Ning trusted that he could truly make something. Jiangsu was delighted to start a company, but he felt awkward about the money. Gu Ning had already given them a house. He felt utterly embarrassed if he asked Gu Ning for money as well. Gu Ning also knew what was on Jiangsu's mind. She encouraged him, "Uncle, no one respects us, only because we're poor. You're the only man in our family. You must be strong and powerful to protect us." Gu Ning only said that to comfort Jiangsu. She had no intention to reveal her other properties before she could do better than the Tang family. It needed more than money to surpass the Tang family. Money didn't mean everything. She also needed power and support from the authorities. It was hard to force an official to leave his position with money, but it was much easier to ruin someone's company with power. Therefore, a good network was very significant. Thus Gu Ning planned to network actively in the future. Jiangsu was touched. What Gu Ning had said affected him a lot. Exactly. Only because they were poor, no one respected them. Especially Gu Man and Gu Qing, they had been despised and discriminated against by the rest of the Gu family for a long time. As long as Gu Man, Gu Qing or Jiangsu himself were powerful, the Gu family wouldn't dare to do that. Jiangsu was immediately full of passion, but he was still embarrassed about the money. "Uncle, I know that you are worried about the money. If that's the case, I can help you with money and you can give my mother a 20% share of your company. My mother of course won't work in your company or interfere in your business. You need to work hard yourself. Please don't underestimate the 20% shares either. If your business grows bigger, 20% shares will soon be equal to the money I give you. So just take it as I lend you the money and do not feel any pressure," Gu Ning said. Although Jiangsu was almost convinced by Gu Ning, he was still a little worried. What if the company isn't profitable? It happens in business. Nothing good comes without risk. You don't need to worry about the money at all. I can totally afford it, Gu Ning said sincerely. She was unbelievably confident. Yes, she could afford it. She didn't want Jiangsu to do the same thing as her. Her goal was to build a business empire with billions or hundreds of billions in assets. As long as Jiangsu could be successful in City F, several 100 million yuan would be enough. Thus, Gu Ning planned to invest 10 million yuan into Jiangsu's business. She had several 100 million yuan in wealth. She could completely afford it. Although Gu Ning wouldn't interfere in Jiangsu's business, if he had any trouble, she would never step aside. Gu Man and Gu Qing heard the talk between Gu Ning and Jiangsu in the kitchen. Gu Qing was already crying in happiness. "Ning Ning, she's such a great kid. Yes, Ning Ning is doing this for our good. We can't disappoint her, right?" Gu Man said on purpose. Gu Qing immediately understood what Gu Man's purpose was. She walked out, talking to Jiangsu. "Su, please accept it. We must be strong and powerful. No one is going to take advantage of us anymore." Discover NW Chapter SN0EL.com. With Gu Qing's support, Jiangsu was now fully convinced. He answered at once, "Great, I'll do it." Actually, he had always had the idea to run his own business, but lacked the money. "Actually, I have a friend who invited me to do the business of construction materials together. I really wanted to join him at that time. However, because I didn't have the money, I gave up at the end. In 3 years, he already has millions of yuan in wealth. His wife and children all live a good life. Honestly, I'm very jealous of him," Jiang Shuman said with embarrassment. "Construction materials?" Hearing that, Gu Ning's eyes lit up. It was a good idea. Gu Ning planned to be involved in real estate industry, and construction materials would be highly important to her business. It would be better if her uncle could help. "I think it's a good idea. Uncle, I agree with you to do the business of construction materials. I'll invest 10 million yuan, Gu Ning said. What? 10 million yuan? Hearing that, Jiangsu was astonished. He thought 1 million yuan would be enough. He didn't expect it would cost 10 million yuan. Uncle, since we're getting involved, why not start a bigger business? Don't be a chicken. Gu Ning encouraged him. Great, Ning, I won't let you all down. Since Jiangsu had made up his mind, he decided to do his best. Aunt, you can quit your job too. Whether you want to help uncle, or be a housewife, or open a small shop, you can choose. Besides, women need to take good care of themselves. We were poor before, but now we don't need to worry about money at all. I won't go to school tomorrow. After we finish the legal procedure of buying a house, we can go buy skincare products, clothes and jewelry, and then get our hair done, Gu Ning said. In case Gu Qing would refuse, Gu Ning immediately added, Aunt, you can't reject that. We're family. We need to support each other. Since they were family, Gu Qing couldn't reject. She said, Fine, I'll listen to you, but isn't it inappropriate that you don't go to school tomorrow? Gu Ning was already not good at studying. Gu Qing was afraid it would affect her studies if she asked for leave. It's just 1 day off, it'll be fine. Besides, we can only finish the procedure on a weekday, Gu Ning said. Fine, Gu Qing compromised. As for Gu Man, she now believed that her Gu Ning was able to handle her life and studies. Oh, I also bought clothes in City G for you. Let me bring them out for you now. Saying that, Gu Ning walked to the second room. She needed to take those gifts out of the telepathic eye space. New chapters will be fully updated at novl/bin.com. Really? Gu Qing didn't know what to say. They were all moved by Gu Ning's kindness. Gu Ning brought many bags from the room, placing them all on the sofa. Gu Qing immediately pulled Gu Man to go have a look. I bought a gift for everyone. This is for Uncle. Gu Ning put a bag before Jiangsu. Then she gave Gu Man and Gu Qing a bag separately. These two are for both of you. Gu Man and Gu Qing immediately took the bags. Xingyue, this is yours. Gu Ning gave the last bag to Jiang Xingyue. Jiang Xingyue took it and thanked her, Thank you, sister. Gu Ning didn't take hers out. Wow, this is Lancome. It must be expensive. Gu Qing couldn't help but raise her voice in surprise. She obviously knew Lancome was a famous and expensive international brand. This is Armani. Jiangsu was also amazed. He always dreamed of having a good suit, but he didn't have enough money to buy one. Now Gu Ning sent him a much more expensive suit. It's Gucci. It's so beautiful. Gu Qing was surprised and excited. She kept holding it against her body and asked Gu Man, What do you think? It's beautiful. Gu Man smiled. She looked at the clothing in her hands. She also loved them. Although they had none of the vanity, as women they also loved beautiful clothes. The dress is so pretty. Jiang Xingyue raised her voice with excitement. There are phones. Finally, everyone discovered the phones at the bottom. They got excited once more. I have a new phone. Jiang Xingyue almost screamed. The rest all pulled out a new phone from the bottom of their bags and unwrapped it. It's so lovely. Exactly. Everyone held their new clothes and new phones in their hands. They could barely put them down. What's that smell? Gu Ning smelled something then immediately ran to kitchen. Gu Man and Gu Qing immediately followed her. They forgot to turn off the fire. Luckily, it wasn't too late. Gu Ning had an acute sense of smell, so she discovered it early. When Gu Ning was finally free, she checked their Family of Fighters WeChat group. Everyone mentioned her in the chatting history. They all cared whether she was back or not, with their gifts of course. Gu Ning shook her head lightly. She typed and sent, I'm back at home, but I won't be at school tomorrow. I'll give the gifts to you all the day after tomorrow. How ran, boss, what happened? May I help? Muku, yeah, what happened? Gu Ning, nothing, I need to deal with something with my mother and my aunt. Please keep it between us, and don't let the teacher know. How ran, you mother left the hospital. Why didn't you tell us earlier? We could have gone to pick you up and celebrate. Zhang Tianping, exactly. Gu Ning, it's fine. Chu Peihan, how about our gifts? Everyone, yes. What did you buy for us? Gu Ning, you'll know the day after tomorrow. All right, I need to have my dinner now. Bye-bye. Then, Gu Ning ignored them. It was the time for dinner. Actually, it was 9 p.m. already, so they were having night snacks, but everyone enjoyed it so much. After the dinner, it was almost 10 p.m. Gu Qing's family soon left. They had a lot to do, so Gu Man didn't ask them to stay tonight. They left their clothes here though, since they would be moving in tomorrow. While they were leaving, Gu Ning reminded them just to bring everything important with them tomorrow, and to leave the other stuff in the old house. They could sell the furniture later. Moreover, Gu Ning also told them not to tell the rest in the Gu family. They wanted to live their own lives. After Gu Qing's family was gone, Gu Ning and Gu Man went back to their own rooms. Gu Man intended to let Gu Ning use the master room, but Gu Ning refused to do so. Gu Ning wouldn't be staying here for too long. After half a year, she would be going to the capital city. By then, she would buy a new house under her name. Gu Ning also had no intention to let Gu Man move in with her in the future. Her mother could come and visit her if her mother wanted to. Once she was in the capital city, the situation would be complicated, so Gu Ning didn't want to involve Gu Man. Gu Ning hadn't brought too much stuff from the old house the other day. They didn't have many valuable objects either, so she had dumped all the old broken stuff. Gu Ning planned to live a brand new life. Gu Man and Gu Ning talked for a long while before they went to bed. It was almost 12 p.m., Gu Ning checked the WeChat group again before she went asleep. Her friends were still talking, but she stayed quiet. Both Gu Man and Gu Ning had a great night. Gu Qing and Jiang Su, however, didn't sleep at all. They were too busy thinking about what had happened today. Su, do you feel unbelieving about what happened tonight? Gu Qing asked. She hadn't fully recovered from the shock. It felt like they had been on a rocket and had gone up high into the sky directly from the ground. I do, but it is real, Jiang Su answered. Ning Ning is totally different now. She just said that she would let us live a good life last week. And she fulfilled her promise this week. It's so surprising. Gu Qing said. Exactly, Ning Ning has been being a completely different girl ever since she had the car accident. She has suddenly become mature, independent, outgoing, and confident. She behaves nothing like an 18-year-old girl, Jiang Su said. He was a little ashamed that he didn't have power like Gu Ning. After a while, he added, no matter what, it's a good thing that Ning Ning changed. She now knows how to fight back. The Gu family has broken Ning Ning and her mother's heart. They have even kicked them out of the old house. Luckily, Ning Ning is powerful now, or they would live a harder life. Indeed. If they knew Ning Ning is rich now, they would be envious. They would probably try to have a good relationship with a rich Ning Ning. Those people are sick. Gu Qing had seen through the rest of the people in the Gu family. We must be low-key in front of them. Don't cause any trouble, Jiang Su said. They didn't fall asleep until 3 o'clock in the morning. The next day, Jiang Xingyue got up to go to school. Gu Qing and Jiang Su were awake too. It was still early, but they couldn't sleep anymore. They were so thrilled to move into a new house. Gu Qing told Jiang Xingyue to go straight to Fanghua Luxury Mansion when she left her school today. Jiang Xingyue was also excited to move into the new house today. Although they were going to move out today, they weren't in a hurry to get their deposit back, because the lease of their old house wouldn't be ending until the end of the month. Gu Qing went to work as usual. She had already written her resignation letter last night. She planned to ask to resign when she got to work. Gu Qing was just an ordinary worker, so it wouldn't make any difference if she resigned. Thus it was very easy for her to resign. After her resignation, Gu Qing called Jiang Su. They went to Fanghua Luxury Mansion separately. They did not live far away from Fanghua Luxury Mansion. It only took more than half an hour to get there by bus, but if it was rush hour, it took around an hour even by car. There wasn't a direct bus there, and Jiang Su was also pulling 2 big suitcases, so it wasn't convenient for them to take a bus. They ended up taking a taxi. Gu Ning made it a daily routine to get up early. She got up around 6 o'clock this morning and went to have run downstairs. She had run for an hour with 3 breaks. After she caught her breath, she called her head teacher to ask for a leave. It was not easy to ask for a leave as a senior in a high school, except if it was a special situation. Gu Ning then lied to her teacher. She said that she was on her period, and it hurt so much that she couldn't get up. Her head teacher was a woman too, and she understood how painful it could be. Thus she agreed. Gu Ning felt a little guilty. But she had to ask for a leave today. Gu Ning finished her run before she went back home to take a shower. At that time, Gu Man woke up. She was still a little confused when she found herself in the brand new house. Gu Man got up to prepare breakfast. When it was almost 10 o'clock, Gu Man received a call from Gu Qing saying that they had arrived. Find the new st ovals on n/velben.com. Gu Ning let her mother tell them to wait at the sale department. They would be right downstairs. 10 minutes later, both Gu Ning and Gu Man went downstairs. Gu Ning had called Wei Jirui before, so he was already waiting at the sales hall. The minute Gu Ning and her family walked in, Wei Jirui welcomed them with great passion. Gu Qing had already made her choice of the house, so she directly told Gu Qing and Jiang Su to take out their documents so that they could finish the legal procedure. After that, Gu Ning paid the money before they got the key. Wei Jirui also gave Gu Ning's key back to her. Gu Ning had given the key to him because she had asked him to get an hourly cleaner to clean her new house. When Gu Qing and Jiang Su received the keys and the property ownership certificate, their hands were trembling. They had never believed that they would own a house one day, even though the house was a gift from Gu Ning. They all went back home with the suitcases afterwards. Wei Jirui felt touched while he walked Gu Ning and her family out. She was such a great kid. She not only bought a house for herself, but she also bought a house for the family of her aunt. They must be very close. They went back to the 9th floor, building number 2, Zone G, and stopped at number 906, which was Gu Qing's family's new house. They opened the door and walked inside. Although they already knew what it was like inside, they were still amazed by what they saw before their own eyes. Gu Qing's family walked all around with excitement, like children at Halloween. "Let's have a meal here first before we go out," Gu Ning said. Then, they walked out of number 906 and stepped into number 901. Gu Man and Gu Qing went to cook together, while Gu Ning and Jiang Su were talking. "Uncle, do you have any difficulties in starting the business of construction materials?" Gu Ning asked. She didn't want to interfere in Jiang Su's business. She just cared about it. "As for the materials, I plan to go to the construction materials market today and have a look. As for the manufacturers, with a 10 million yuan fund, we naturally will only use the best. I'll look up on the internet first later before I contact the manufacturers," Jiang Su said. "Very well. I'll transfer 1 million yuan to you then. You can go buy a car. We don't need to be too high profile at the beginning, so 500,000 yuan would be enough. You can buy it directly in your name. Also buy a computer for yourself. The rest can be used as the deposit to find a store," Gu Ning said. After the meal, they went out. Gu Ning had intended to let Gu Man and Gu Qing put on their new clothes, but they refused because they hadn't gotten used to it yet. Gu Ning didn't force them to. It took time, and she understood. There were many banks outside of Fanghua Luxury Mansion, so Gu Ning transferred 1 million yuan into Jiang Su's account. She then also transferred 1 million yuan into Gu Man's and Gu Qing's card separately. Gu Qing tried to reject. She thought she had received too many things from Gu Ning. It was 1 million yuan after all, which was too much in Gu Qing's eyes. However, Gu Ning persuaded her to accept it. Gu Qing was now more than moved. Jiang Su couldn't start his business in a short time. Besides, it took time to run it properly. They didn't go to work during that time and were without other sources of income, so they could only rely on their savings. Both Gu Man and Gu Qing had never had such a huge amount of money in their accounts. They seized their cards in hands tightly, in case it would be lost. Jiang Su went to deal with his business, while Gu Ning along with Gu Man and Gu Qing took a taxi heading to the commercial building in downtown. Gu Ning proposed to buy clothes first, but was stopped by Gu Qing. "Ning, you already bought us clothes yesterday. We don't need to waste more money on clothing. It's not enough. My mom and I have dumped all of our old clothes. We also need to buy new clothing." "Relax, we're not going to buy the designer brands, but some common brands," Gu Ning comforted. They didn't need too many luxurious clothes. Luxurious clothing was only for important or special occasions. In daily life, they could wear ordinary clothes. People wore designer brand just to show off. Many medium-level brands were also of great quality. Gu Qing listened to Gu Ning at the end. They went to a medium-level brand of clothes to shop for Gu Man and Gu Qing. Even though the brand was just medium-level, it was still a luxury for Gu Man and Gu Qing because they had never been to places like that. Therefore, they were intimidated when they stepped in. Gu Man and Gu Qing weren't wearing good clothes and seemed poor, plus both of them behaved in an unconfident way, so the saleswoman assumed that they couldn't afford anything. Thus she didn't even bother to greet them. Gu Ning ignored the saleswoman. She guided Gu Qing and Gu Man, walking around casually. If they liked it, they could buy something. If they didn't like it, they would leave. Gu Qing chose a piece of clothing. She turned the price tag and was shocked. Gee! It costs 1,800 yuan. 1,800 yuan was her salary for half a month. Although she knew the clothes Gu Ning had bought for them cost much more than that, she still thought the price was too high when she saw it with her own eyes. Meanwhile, a sarcastic female voice sounded, "If you can't afford a 1,800 yuan piece of clothing, then don't ever step in here. Look at what you're wearing. You only deserve cheap stuff." Gu Qing felt utterly embarrassed. She lowered her head in shame. Read latest OVLS at nv/e/l/buy.com. Gu Ning was upset. She looked to the woman, which was surprisingly familiar. Gu Ning lifted the corner of her lips. She looked evil and called, "Oh, isn't this Miss Jean?" The woman heard Gu Ning's voice. Her face changed immediately. "Who are you?" I don't know you." Gu Ning was now sure that the woman must have gone to get her jewelry identified, given that she was being so diffident. If her jewelry had been real, she would have been mad to see Gu Ning again. "Don't you remember? It was last Sunday, in the jewelry store," Gu Ning reminded her on purpose. "Shut your mouth." The woman panicked and interrupted Gu Ning. "What's wrong?" At that time, a woman in her early 40s dressed in an extravagant way walked over from the other side. Her eyes rounded when she saw Gu Ning and her family. Both Gu Qing and Gu Man were surprised and felt uneasy to meet the woman. Gu Ning squinted her eyes with coldness. The woman was Lin Lijuan, Gu Xiaoxiao's mother. "Gu Qing, Gu Man, what are you doing here?" Lin Lijuan asked in surprise. It was beyond her imagination that Gu Qing and Gu Man would show up here. In her eyes, they always wore cheap stuff from the street stalls. Gu Qing and Gu Man didn't want to talk to Lin Lijuan at first, but they were relatives after all. It wasn't appropriate if they ignored her question in the public. Accordingly, Gu Qing said airily, "We're just here to have a look." Gu Qing didn't want her to know that they were here to shop. In front of Lin Lijuan, they preferred to pretend to be poor forever. "Oh, I thought you picked up money on the roads, and you dare to walk in a place like that." Hearing that, Lin Lijuan suddenly changed her tone. She didn't bother to hide her complete disdain. "Lin, do you know them?" the woman asked. Yeah. I've told you about them before. They're my sisters-in-law." Lin Lijuan sneered. It seemed Lin Lijuan had badmouthed Gu Qing and Gu Man often behind their backs. The woman immediately looked at Gu Man and Gu Qing with intense dislike. But since Gu Ning was here too, she didn't dare to laugh at them. "Gu Man, you were brave to move out from the old house, rather than apologize to us." Although Lin Lijuan was still mad at Gu Ning, Gu Man and Gu Ning had paid for their behavior. Thus she wasn't as annoyed as before, but now, seeing that Gu Qing was with Gu Man, Lin Lijuan believed that Gu Qing must have let Gu Man stay with her. She was immediately irritated. "Gu Qing, did you let Gu Man stay with you? Our mother has made it clear. If you dare to let Gu Man stay with you, we won't help you anymore." It sounded like they had helped Gu Qing. Gu Ning, who had been ignored, couldn't help laughing in an ironic way. Lin Lijuan didn't notice Gu Ning until now, but when she looked at Gu Ning, she was amazed at her first glance. Yes, she was amazed, because Gu Ning was totally different now. Gu Ning was more beautiful than before, and she didn't abase herself before anyone any longer. She looked elegant to some extent. That makes it sound like the Gu family has ever helped my aunt. As far as I know, my aunt had relied on herself ever since she got married. Gu Ning stared at Lin Lijuan. She didn't bother to hide her complete dislike either. Lin Lijuan immediately wore an unpleasant face. She was embarrassed by Gu Ning's words in public. Then, Gu Qing followed up. Lin Li Juan, let's be clear. We have never ever received your help. Besides, Gu Man doesn't stay with me now. She had indeed never received help from Gu Qingxiang. She wouldn't let Lin Li Juan take advantage of her. Lin Li Juan's face seemed more unpleasant. But she couldn't deny the truth. After a long breath in, Lin Li Juan lied without hesitation, Gu Qing, we're relatives. How could I step aside when you need help? The point is that you never talk to us about your troubles. And Gu Man, the old house belongs to the sons of our mother, but we've allowed you to live in there for so many years. We've done a lot for you both. They paid you rent. Besides, it was you who kicked them out when they were in trouble. Gu Qing retorted. Lin Li Juan was immediately mad. That was because Gu Ning hit my daughter and even refused to apologize. They deserved it. She deserved it. Gu Ning met Lin Li Juan's glare without cowardice. Lin Li Juan was annoyed as well as surprised that Gu Ning dared to talk to her in that way. The people in the Gu family, especially the younger generation, all respected her the most, but Gu Ning was different. She even humiliated Gu Xiaoxiao in front of Lin Li Juan's face. What do you think you are to hit my daughter? Lin Li Juan said. What does she think she is to insult me? Gu Ning asked back. So what? What do you think you are? You bastard. Lin Li Juan swore at Gu Ning in public. She behaved like a crazy woman. Shut up. Both Gu Qing and Gu Man snapped. They were totally aggravated. Lin Li Juan, Ning Ning is my daughter. I won't allow you to humiliate her. Gu Man slammed. Gu Man was gentle, or weak to some extent in her daily life, but once Gu Ning was involved, she would become a hedgehog and attack the enemy at once. She doesn't have a father. She is a bastard. Lin Li Juan instead didn't feel guilty at all. At that time, Lin Li Juan only felt that it suddenly went black. When she got her mind back, Gu Ning's face was already magnified in front of her eyes. There was pure coldness in Gu Ning's eyes. Lin Li Juan immediately felt great pressure. She couldn't breathe or move at all. Then, Gu Ning said coldly, don't think that just because you're older than me, I wouldn't dare to hit you. If I even hear the word bastard from your mouth once more, you'll pay for it. Gu Ning's words were like magic sounds, which sank deeply into Lin Li Juan's mind. She didn't question her words at all, but felt very frightened. New N0vel chapters are published on N0v/e/lb/in/co/m. Mom, Aunt, let's go. Gu Ning ignored Lin Li Juan. She left with Gu Man and Gu Qing. She didn't want to argue with Lin Li Juan in public, especially when Gu Man and Gu Qing were here too. Lin Li Juan might not want to maintain her dignity, but Gu Man and Gu Qing cherished theirs. When Gu Ning and her families were gone, Lin Li Juan finally got her mind back because of a sound from the woman next to her. Although Lin Li Juan still felt afraid of Gu Ning, she was more mad at Gu Ning who had treated her in that way. Why? How could Gu Ning do that? Lin Li Juan then realized that everyone around gave her a strange glance because she had behaved like a crazy woman. She regretted it immediately and then rushed out. Although Lin Li Juan was always pushy and mean to her family, she valued her appearance in others' eyes very much. However, today she hadn't restrained herself. Gu Qing and Gu Man were both annoyed, but they already knew what kind of person Lin Li Juan was, so they kind of got used to it. Alright, don't be mad at someone who isn't important at all. Let's keep on shopping, Gu Ning comforted. Gu Qing and Gu Man sighed heavily. Actually, they had worried most that Gu Ning would be hurt. However, because Gu Ning remained calm, and they also relaxed a little. After a while, they all cheered up. Each one of them had many bags in hand. They bought a lot, not only for themselves, but also for Jiang Su and Jiang Xinyue. The price ranged from hundreds to thousands of yuan. Each had bought 4 to 5 suits of clothes. Women loved shopping. Although Gu Man and Gu Qing were not willing to spend a lot of money at first, they soon forgot about it while shopping in the mall. After that, they went to buy sheet sets. Gu Ning and her mother bought 4 sets. Each room needed 3 sets for replacement. There were 3 bedrooms in their new house. They naturally needed 9 sets in all. However, there were already 3 sheet sets on the beds in their new house. They were all new too and only needed to be washed. They had also bought 2 sheet sets yesterday and only needed to buy another 4 sheet sets. Even though the guest room was empty almost all the time, they wanted to make it look cozy as well. Gu Qing's family bought 6 sheet sets for their 3 rooms as well. Those sheet sets were too heavy to carry. Gu Ning also couldn't put them into the telepathic eye space because it would expose herself. Therefore, they could only get the shop owner to help them with delivery. Not now, but when they were about to leave. There were all kinds of food on the underground floor of the commercial building. Cosmetics were on the first floor, and jewelry on the second floor, women's clothing was on the third floor, men's clothing on the fourth floor, furniture and domestic appliances on the fifth floor, and children's clothes and stationery on the sixth floor, while musical instruments and sports equipment were on the seventh floor. Gu Ning went down to the second floor to buy jewelry for Gu Man and Gu Qing. Although gold was a little boring, it was suitable for women at Gu Man and Gu Qing's age. Jade would be more suitable of course, but their jade hadn't been done yet. Gu Ning had to wait for Qin Yifan to come back and take the jade to make jewelry. Thus she decided to buy gold for now. They bought 1 set each. A necklace, a pair of earrings, a bracelet and a ring. Gold wasn't expensive. 1 set just cost around 40 to 50,000 yuan. They then went to get a VIP card in a high-end beauty salon near the commercial building. However, their time was limited today, so they didn't use it right away. After they got the card, it was almost 5 p.m. They also needed to go back home, because Jiang Xinyue was about to leave her school to go home too. They directly took the delivery car with their sheet sets home. The delivery car stopped at the outside of G-Zone, so Gu Ning and her family had to carry all the stuff back by themselves. Luckily, Jiang Xinyue was back, and she could help. At the end, Jiang Xinyue carried 2 sheet sets, Gu Qing and Gu Man each carried 4 sheet sets, while Gu Ning carried the rest of the bags. When they were finally home, it was 6 p.m. already. It was time for their meal. Gu Qing called Jiang Su to ask him when he would get back. Jiang Su was already on his way home, so Gu Qing asked him to go buy some food ingredients on his way. Although it was a tiring day, they all had great fun. Jiang Xinyue jumped around with her new clothes in hand. She had never had so many beautiful clothes before. Before Jiang Su got home, everyone was resting. On the other side, Lin Lijuan had been aggravated by Gu Ning. She stopped shopping and went back home earlier. Once she got home, Lin Lijuan kept swearing at Gu Ning and her mother. What happened? Her mother-in-law asked. Although she heard Lin Lijuan swearing at Gu Ning and her mother, she didn't know what had happened. Lin Lijuan then told the old lady everything. What? Gu Ning the bastard threatened you today? Isn't today Monday? Why wasn't she at school? The old lady was also surprised. Hearing that, Lin Lijuan finally realized today was Monday, but Gu Ning wasn't in her school. Who knows? She probably dropped out. Saying that, Lin Lijuan even believed it was true, and slightly felt happy. If she really dropped out, she deserved it. She wouldn't apologize to Xiao Xiao, and even yelled at me. The old lady snorted with anger. She had no sympathy for her granddaughter at all. Oh, did Gu Qing behave against my warning and let Gu Man and Gu Qing stay with her? The old lady asked. I don't know. She said no. Although Gu Qing had denied it, Lin Lijuan didn't believe her. The rent was so high outside. How could Gu Man and Gu Qing afford it? No, I must give them a call. The old lady seemed like she enjoyed humiliating Gu Man and Gu Ning so much. She immediately took out her phone and called Gu Man. Unfortunately, no one answered. Gu Man did it on purpose, of course. The old lady called her after they had had a fierce argument with Lin Lijuan. She must be calling to criticize them. Gu Man didn't want to answer the call at all. Jiang Su had walked around in the construction materials market. There was a good location to open a shop, but it was too small. Jiang Su did have a good choice, but the store was located outside of the construction materials market. It was noticeable and huge, around 300 square meters, and the annual rent was 500,000 yuan. If his business was profitable, he could get the utilities fee back within several months, but if his business wasn't profitable, it would hard to settle a deal within a year. After Gu Ning heard the news, she thought that they had to choose the huge store and run a big business. Therefore, she supported Jiang Su. All West ch.rs on n.o/vli/n/.cm. Although Jiang Su thought it was a little risky, he was happy. Gu Ning understood Jiang Su was slightly worried. She comforted him to do his best, he didn't need to worry about the money. Before Gu Ning went to sleep, she talked with her friends in their Family of Fighters WeChat group. She told them to keep training tomorrow. Anyone who didn't show up before 6:20 a.m. wouldn't get his or her gift. Knowing that, each of them all promised they would show up on time tomorrow. Except for Mixi, the rest all didn't lack money or gifts. However, they lacked meaningful gifts. It had nothing to do with the price. As long as the gift was from Gu Ning, they would be happy even if it was only worth several yuan. The next morning, Gu Ning got up at 5:30 a.m. and left her home at 5:35 a.m. Fanghua Luxury Mansion was 7 to 8 kilometers away from her school. It took her around 25 minutes to get there by running. When she arrived at her school, it was 6 a.m. She went to buy breakfast and coincidentally met Mixi on her way. That girl was pretty early today. Ning Ning, you're finally back. Seeing Gu Ning, Mixi was super excited. She ran to Gu Ning and held her arm tightly. They seemed very close, but it was quite normal between close friends. Although Gu Ning didn't like to have physical touch with others, she could accept it if the other person was her friend. What do you want for breakfast? It's on me. Mixi asked. Mixi was Gu Ning's close friend, so she didn't reject her kindness. A steamed bun and soy milk, please. They didn't have much time left, so it was convenient to have a steamed bun and soy milk. Both Gu Ning and Mixi bought a steamed bun and soy milk. They went into their school together. Ning Ning, can you tell me what my gift is? Mixi was curious. Sorry, I can't. I'll show you all when everyone arrives, Gu Ning answered. Fine. Mixi was a little disappointed. There were a few students running in the morning. They met Muku halfway. They were all in school uniforms. Thus Muku actually didn't recognize them from their back at first, but he soon recognized their voices. Hey boss, Mixi. He ran to them immediately. Boss, where's my gift? Muku asked for his gift at once too. Ning Ning said she would only show us when everyone arrives, Mixi said before Gu Ning could. Muku then had the same feeling of disappointment as Mixi. When they arrived at the football field, it was 6:10 a.m. Chu Peihan came minutes later. She asked for her gift too, but got the same answer as well. A few minutes later, Hao Ran and his friends arrived. They ran here, and were all out of breath. Boss, where's my gift? Hao Ran asked with excitement. Run 10 circles first. The last one, except for Mixi, will only get his or her gift after the morning class, Gu Ning said, then she started to run. 10 circles amounted to 4,000 meters. No! Hearing that, the boys all shouted in sadness. It was such a torture to them. The last one could only get his or her gift after the morning class. No one wanted to be the last one. No one dared to argue with Gu Ning unless they wanted to get punched, so they had to follow her at the end. It seemed impossible for Hao Ran and his brothers to beat Chu Peihan and Muku, so they decided to compete with each other. They now became competitors for Gu Ning's gifts. Indeed, from the beginning, Hao Ran, Qin Zixuan and Zhang Tianping were left behind. However, they just hadn't caught their breath yet. It didn't mean they were weak. They actually weren't far behind Gu Ning. Gu Ning ran 3 times longer than the others, but with her power, she was now much stronger than before. She felt a little tired, but not much. She had run 7 to 8 kilometers from Fanghua Luxury Mansion to her school, but she was simply slightly out of breath. She didn't feel utterly exhausted anymore. Other than Gu Ning, Chu Peihan was the strongest among them. Although Gu Ning didn't know Chu Peihan's background very well, she believed she must have received long-term professional training. Chu Peihan was 1 minute later than Gu Ning after they both had finished 10 circles. It took an ordinary man 3 minutes and 30 seconds to 4 minutes to run a kilometer. The longer you ran, the more tired you would feel. Gu Ning spent 13 minutes on 4 kilometers, while Chu Peihan spent 14 minutes. After running, Chu Peihan was exhausted, but she could still balance her body. Muku was also 1 minute later than Chu Peihan. He almost collapsed on the ground. Mixi, who had run 5 circles, came after Muku. She was worn out too, but after several days of running as training, Mixi was stronger now. The last group was Hao Ran, Qin Zixuan, and then Zhang Tianping. It took him almost 20 minutes to finish the 10 circles. Ha, I'm not the last one. Hao Ran laughed excitedly. As if he had been the last one he would have been killed. No big deal. I just need to wait until the morning class is over, Zhang Tianping said airily. Relax, I won't do it. I merely wanted you all to be active, Gu Ning said. What? Boss, you're so devious, everyone said with one accord, but their voices sounded weak. Gu Ning didn't care. She sat down on the lawn with her backpack, while the others all surrounded her. Honestly, I didn't know what to buy. I basically chose them randomly. These are for you 4 boys. Saying that, Gu Ning took out 4 paper boxes, throwing them directly at the boys. Wow, boss! It's an international brand. Hao Ran raised his voice when he saw the logo on the boxes. Exactly, boss, have you picked up money on the road? Mu Ku asked. Both Qin Zixuan and Zhang Tianping looking at Gu Ning with curiosity and amazement. Read latest OVLS at nv/e/l/buy.com. They all knew well about Gu Ning's background now. It was barely affordable for her to buy a well-known domestic brand. But she even bought them stuff from an international brand as gifts. What brand? Chu Peihan immediately grabbed the box from Mu Ku. She glanced at it and was shocked. Gee! It's Armani! She also stared at Gu Ning with surprise. Gu Ning didn't answer their questions, but took out a bag, giving it to Chu Peihan. When everyone saw the logo on the bag, they all rounded their eyes once more. It was Lancome. Chu Peihan threw the paper box back to Mu Ku at once. She even lost her interest in seeing what was inside. Boss, did you really pick up money on the roads? How generous are you? Chu Peihan took her gift and asked in shock. Gu Ning still didn't answer her question, but took out Yumixi's gift and gave it to her. Wow! It's a wallet. Meanwhile, Hao Ran had opened his box. Gee! It's a perfume. Boss, I love you. How could you know I love perfume so much? Chu Peihan was thrilled. She immediately hugged Gu Ning tightly. Gu Ning actually didn't know how much Chu Peihan loved perfume. She could just smell the fragrance every time she met Chu Peihan. Oh, my gift is a phone. Yumixi opened her package. She was excited and surprised to see a phone inside. Although she already had a phone, it was old and second-hand. She even felt embarrassed to pull it out. Ning, it must be very expensive. Yumixi liked it very much, but it was too expensive in her eyes. Indeed, boss. It may sound a little harsh, but we all know your background. How could you afford such expensive gifts? Chu Peihan asked directly. They couldn't ignore the fact. The rest all stared at Gu Ning. They didn't say another word, but their faces showed their puzzlement. Gu Ning felt warmth in her heart at being cared for by all of her friends. Although she couldn't tell them too much, she decided to tell them something. Therefore, Gu Ning told them she had saved a man's life, and she got a king's green which was worth 10 million yuan as a reward. However, she didn't tell them what she had done in City G. What? The king's green? 10 million yuan? Knowing that, everyone was struck dumb. It was so amazingly unbelievable. Except for Mu Ku and Qin Zixuan, no one else knew much about jade, but they had all heard of the king's green, which was the top type and super expensive. That was why it was worth 10 million yuan for a piece the size of a quail's egg. Yumixi excluded, most of them were from rich families, especially Zhang Tianping who had millions of yuan in assets on his own. However, none of them had ever had 10 million yuan in hand. Even Mu Ku's jewelry store only had several million yuan in assets. Accordingly, 10 million yuan was a huge amount of money in their eyes. Besides, the jewelry in Mu Ku's jewelry store was all made of low-level jade. One ring only cost hundreds of yuan. The king's green was merely a legend to them. Qin Zixuan's family had run a jewelry business many generations ago. He had seen many medium-level jade, but he had only heard of the king's green from books and the internet. After a long while, everyone finally got their minds back. It was so shocking. Boss, you're so awesome. Hao Ran complimented. He now admired Gu Ning completely. The rest all agreed. Yumixi was envious, but not jealous. She knew she couldn't do it. But boss, Why didn't you let us have a look before selling it? Mu Ku complained. Exactly. It would be more exciting to see the king's green than a superstar. Qin Zixuan said. No. I still prefer to see a superstar, especially my idol, Su Zhifan. Chu Peihan immediately became shy and was full of love. Everyone immediately got goosebumps. All right, I don't want anyone else to know about it, or I might get robbed someday, Gu Ning said. Sure, boss. We definitely won't tell others. We'll never tell others. Everyone promised. Great. We need to go back to our classrooms now. Gu Ning stood up. The group then went back to the teaching building. Gu Xiaoxiao had heard about what had happened at the shopping mall yesterday from her mother. She didn't believe that Gu Ning had dropped out of the school, but she wanted to check for herself. Therefore, Gu Xiaoxiao kept looking at the stairs from the passage the minute she got to her school. She wanted to see whether Gu Ning would show up. Gu Ning is increasingly arrogant now. Not only has she hit you, she has also argued with your grandmother. Now she has even threatened you, mother. I think she is going to despise your whole family. Chen Ziao said. She mainly wanted to add fuel to the flames. Chen Ziao was way smarter than Gu Xiaoxiao. Ever since Hao Ran and his brothers regarded Gu Ning as their boss, she had been afraid of Gu Ning, but she hated Gu Ning as always. Chen Ziao had never been slapped by anyone, her parents included. She couldn't accept the fact that Gu Ning had hit her, but out of fright, Chen Ziao didn't dare to annoy Gu Ning herself. Therefore, she tried to use Gu Xiaoxiao's hands to deal with Gu Ning. If Gu Xiaoxiao had known about Chen Ziao's scheme, she would have immediately broken off her relations with Chen Ziao. Unfortunately, she didn't know. Instead, she was immediately irritated and retorted, impossible. She is a poor bastard. What does she think she is to despise us? Although saying that, Gu Xiaoxiao did feel threatened by Gu Ning. Gu Ning had changed a lot these days. She suddenly became so excellent at fighting and even made good friends with those rich kids. Thinking of that, Gu Xiaoxiao felt more annoyed and upset. A vicious look appeared on her face. I will ruin her, Gu Xiaoxiao said. Chen Ziao of course was happy to hear that. That was exactly what she wanted. Even though she doubted whether Gu Xiaoxiao could succeed or not, it had nothing to do with her after all. Look, Gu Ning is coming. At the same time, Chen Ziao saw that Gu Ning and others were downstairs. Gu Xiaoxiao looked over. There were many people around Gu Ning, which made her even more jealous. It's so disappointing. Read latest OVLS at nv/e/l/buy.com. She was now eager to ruin Gu Ning. When Gu Ning walked into her classroom, she almost knocked into Xiao Feifei. In the past, Xiao Feifei would have sworn at her already, but now, she just glared at Gu Ning without saying a word. Xiao Feifei had the same feelings as Chen Ziao. She hated Gu Ning as usual, but didn't dare to do anything. They all schemed to do something to get revenge on Gu Ning. The head teacher came to the classroom during the morning class. She informed the students there would be a monthly test this Friday. When the morning class was almost over, Gu Ning received a message from Qin Yifan. He was at the airport now, and would arrive at City F after 2 hours. He told her to come to Itsue Jade store with her jade if she was free this afternoon. Qin Yifan couldn't wait to see the jade. He knew the jade had to be special, but Qin Yifan would never have expected that it was a top-level jade, even as rare as the king's green. Gu Ning also wanted to make the jewelry as soon as possible, so she agreed to go see Qin Yifan this afternoon. The break was long, and Chu Peihan ran to the 4th classroom to play with Gu Ning and Yu Mixi. Once Chu Peihan appeared, everyone in the classroom felt frightened. They were all scared to be beaten by Chu Peihan. Mu Ku, Hao Ran and his brothers all wanted to go to Gu Ning as well, but since they were boys, they were afraid it might cause unnecessary gossip for Gu Ning. Therefore they gave up at the end. Gu Ning immediately left her school when the morning classes were over. There was a black Hummer stopped by the road outside their school. It attracted lots of attention. The car was so cool. It was a Hummer. It must be super expensive. It cost at least several million yuan. Gu Ning was also attracted by that cool Hummer, but she just gave it 2 glances, then immediately left in a taxi. Gu Ning didn't see the person in the Hummer, but he saw her. Ling Xiaoting was in the driver's seat. Ling Xiaoting showed up for a reason. He just flew here from City G. He wasn't sure Gu Ning would come out this afternoon, but he still came to her school. Coincidentally, he met her. Seeing Gu Ning head off in a taxi, Lin Xiaoting drove his car and immediately followed her. Gu Ning didn't notice someone was following her. She got out at the commercial building, then directly went into the supermarket. She walked towards Itsue Jade store afterwards. In Itsue Jade store, Qin Yifan had been waited for a long time. The minute he had landed at 10 a.m., he came to his shop. Although he knew Gu Ning wouldn't show up until 12:30 p.m., he couldn't wait to get here. Normally, Qin Yifan wouldn't stay in the store for longer than an hour for inspections, but this time, he had been here for over 2 hours. All the staff felt nervous and confused. When it was almost 12:20 p.m., he kept looking at the entrance of the store. Therefore, once Gu Ning appeared in his sight, he immediately ran over with excitement. "Gu Ning, finally you're here. Come on, show me the jade," Qin Yifan urged. "Relax. Let's get inside first." Gu Ning rolled her eyes. It wasn't appropriate to take out such a priceless object in public. Qin Yifan wore an embarrassed smile. He immediately welcomed Gu Ning inside. The minute Gu Ning stepped in, all the staff in Itsue Jade store recognized her. She had been here with the King's Green last time, which was too shocking to forget. Seeing their boss so excited, everyone thought the girl must have some valuable jade to sell again this time. Thinking of that, the crowd couldn't stay calm any longer. They all fixed their eyes on Gu Ning, but Qin Yifan guided Gu Ning walking to his office. They couldn't see it for themselves, and were all disappointed. Once the two were in the office, Qin Yifan invited Gu Ning to have a seat. He then urged, "Now, can you show me the jade?" Gu Ning smiled resignedly. She took off her backpack and opened it. The jade was wrapped carefully. She handed it to Qin Yifan. Qin Yifan almost grabbed the package from Gu Ning and opened it at once. When he saw the jade inside, he was shocked dumb. He looked at Gu Ning. It was so unbelievable. This is foolish jade. And it was huge. It was universally acknowledged that foolish jade was as rare as the King's Green. It was too rare to buy one even if you were super rich. "Yes. I plan to use it to make 4 bracelets, 4 pairs of earrings, 4 pendants, and a wide ring. The wide ring is merely the size of your thumb. And the rest can be made into a few pendants or pairs of earrings," Gu Ning said. Hearing that, Qin Yifan took a heavy breath in. "Do you want us to design their patterns?" he asked. "Yes. As for the jade pendants, one should be engraved with a snake, one engraved with a cow, one engraved with a rabbit, and one engraved with a dragon. These are the Chinese zodiac signs of Gu Man, Gu Qing, Gu Ning, and Jiang Xingyue. In the same order, please carve Man, Qing, Ning, and Yu on the back separately. And please do the same thing on the inside of the 4 bracelets. I've already written them down on the paper. As for the earrings, there is no specific request. Just don't be too common, please. For the wide ring, please carve Su inside. As for the rest of the jade, make whatever jewelry you can make." "Sure," Qin Yifan answered. He felt like saying something. Gu Ning noticed, and she thought Qin Yifan wanted help, so she asked him, "Just tell me if want to say something." Qin Yifan still felt a little embarrassed to open his mouth, but after a while, he asked, "Do you plan to send the jewelry made from the rest of the jade to others?" "No, I'm going to sell them," Gu Ning said. Knowing that, Qin Yifan was immediately happy. He immediately asked with anticipation, "Could you please sell the rest of the jade to me?" Qin Yifan wanted to use the foolish jade to make earrings and pendants for his mother. Gu Ning didn't know what to say at first. She had intended to put the foolish jewelry in her shop to attract customers, but since Qin Yifan had asked her, she wasn't willing to turn him down. With her jade eyes, Gu Ning would be able to discover more valuable jade as long as she went to Province Y. Therefore, Gu Ning agreed, "No problem." Qin Yifan was thrilled to have Gu Ning's affirmative answer. Except for the part that Gu Ning needed to make jewelry, there was enough left over to make another 2 jade pendants and 2 pairs of earrings. Qin Yifan planned to make a pendant and a pair of earrings for both his mother and his elder sister. Qin Yifan also didn't charge Gu Ning for the carving. No matter if he was being thankful or he simply didn't want to charge Gu Ning, the fee was excluded. Gu Ning insisted on paying the fee in vain, so she agreed at the end. Qin Yifan was always active when Gu Ning was involved. He promised that the jewelry would be done after 3 days. 3 days were more than enough time. Gu Ning still had classes this afternoon, so she didn't stay there much longer. Qin Yifan proposed to send her back, but Gu Ning refused. She didn't want her schoolmates to gossip. Qin Yifan understood, so he gave up. Gu Ning had come here in a hurry and hadn't eaten yet. She planned to eat at the underground first floor before going back. It was almost 1:30 p.m., and Gu Ning still had enough time to eat. Gu Ning ordered her meal and it was soon prepared. While she enjoyed eating, a dark shadow sat down across from her. Gu Ning raised her head. She was shocked when she saw the man. It was him. Why was he here? What? Gu Ning was so surprised that she sprayed rice all over the man's body. Ling Xiaoting was immediately displeased. Gu Ning felt embarrassed. She immediately apologized. Sorry, my fault. I didn't do it on purpose. Please forgive me. She handed tissues to Ling Xiaoting without delay. Ling Xiaoting frowned a little. He took the tissues and wiped the rice off of his clothes. Luckily, he easily cleaned it up after a few wipes. Well, why are you here? Gu Ning asked. Although she asked the question, she already knew the answer. Indeed. The gun, the man said coldly and didn't say anything else. Gu Ning's face changed slightly. That man was indeed smart. He knew that she had hidden a gun with her, and he had chased her all the way, but so what? She had already hidden the gun in the telepathic eye space. It was impossible for him to find it. Accordingly, Gu Ning soon calmed herself down. She pretended to be innocent. What gun? Knowing Gu Ning wouldn't admit it, Ling Xiaoting wasn't mad, but remained patient. The man who has been knocked unconscious by you in private room 503. His gun is missing. You must have taken it away. Why must it only be me because the gun is missing? Gu Ning retorted, although she did take the gun. If it's not you, then it must be the guy who was with you, Ling Xiaoting said. Ling Xiaoting still believed it must have been Gu Ning who took the gun. Gu Ning was speechless. She wanted to say that the hotel manager may have taken it, but she couldn't do it. She didn't want to blame others for what she had done. I didn't take it. I need to attend my classes, and I have no time to be talking to you. Bye. Gu Ning didn't know what to say, so she could only run away. She put on her backpack, walking ahead. Ling Xiaoting didn't stop her, which surprised Gu Ning. Did he give up? Gu Ning was wrong. The man didn't stop her, but followed her. At the beginning, Gu Ning believed that they might be going the same way, but no matter where she went, he would walk behind her. He was apparently following her. Why are you following me? Gu Ning asked resignedly. Did she have to give the gun back to him? I'll follow you until you give the gun back to me, Ling Xiaoting said. Gu Ning was speechless again, but she was really reluctant to give the gun back to him. Follow the latest novels n/velbin.com. Although she knew she couldn't easily get away with it, she wanted to give it a try. Since you believe the gun is with me, you can search for it. Gu Ning stepped forward, like she was prepared for him to search her body. Ling Xiaoting unconsciously stepped back. He frowned a little with a look of dislike in his eyes. I said I didn't take the gun, and you won't believe it. Now I let you search for it, but you don't want to do it. So, please stop following me, or I'll call the police, Gu Ning threatened him, then turned around walking away. This time, Ling Xiaoting didn't follow her up. He stood there still watching Gu Ning disappear from his sight. However, it didn't mean he already gave up just like that. He simply didn't want to cause a scene. Seeing that Ling Xiaoting stopped following her, Gu Ning was relieved. That's all for this part, truckers. See you in the next part.